Chapter 1501. One mouthful of celestial source power was completely exhausted, and Gu Dawi had no choice but to use another mouthful. This seemed to have become a death sentence for him. When all three immortal sources are used up, it will be the time of his defeat. He didn't want to lose. He couldn't lose. A divine fetus was one of the best constitutions in the celestial realm. To think that it would be suppressed by someone in the immortal realm. If he did not have a sage ruler weapon and ended up in the hands of Ling Han, then he would have an excuse to lose. However, the problem was not. No matter how he thought about it, there was absolutely no reason for him to be defeated, but he was defeated, which was unacceptable to him. Gu Dawi roared loudly, and celestial light spat out of his mouth. A blazing light erupted from his divine fetus, which was actually even more intense than the sun physique. He risked it. He had also activated the last bit of immortal origin energy. Rather than waiting to be slowly defeated, he might as well go all out. Who knows, he might have a chance of winning. However, how terrifying was the celestial origin energy? So what if he was a divine fetus? It was not like he had walked the path of a physique. The terrifying energy boiled in his body, and the divine fetus bore the brunt of it, and cracks appeared on it. Gu Dawi used his incredibly powerful willpower to suppress his body that was about to shatter. This was what a king tier was, capable of doing what others could not. He brandished his sword in a slash, and the might of the Saint King tool also skyrocketed greatly, breaking through to the level of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. He exploded with godly prowess and instantly gained the upper hand. He started to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han's expression was cold. This was definitely Gu Dawi's flash in the pan. Didn't he see that even his body was about to explode? If he could still persist for a long time, Ling Han really did not believe it. Once he survived this round of attacks, it would be the moment he blew the horn to counterattack, and it would also be the moment of his victory. However, at this moment, Gu Dawi was really ferocious. The power of two mouthfuls of celestial source power exploded at the same time, and his battle prowess was off the charts. He was incredibly ferocious, and could crush those in the low extreme, medium extreme, and high extreme of the Eternal River tier. In fact, he could even kill those at the consummate level of the low extreme. Everyone was so shocked that their mouths were agape, unable to make a sound. At present, Gu Dawi's battle prowess was already comparable to a big shot, but he had only just advanced into the Eternal River tier. But Ling Han was also so awesome that it made people speechless. No matter how violent Gu Dawi's attacks were, he was still able to withstand them and was calm and unruffled. This was because Ling Han had already actively channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll. In a pinnacle situation, he would even be able to withstand a strike from a saint. Now, there was naturally no need for him to raise his indestructible Heaven Scroll to the pinnacle, and this would also allow him to last longer. Gu Dawi was very clear. Every time Ling Han received a move from him, there would be a flash of golden light trembling on his body, and his origin power would be consumed at an extremely fast rate. Then, as long as he fought until Ling Han's origin power was completely exhausted, he would naturally be able to defeat the latter. However, if he ran out of immortal origin energy first, he would be the one to lose. There was no turning back, only a fight. He went berserk and blasted at Ling Han. He didn't want to lose, he definitely didn't want to lose. Ling Han was as still as a mountain. This was only a competition. If it was a true battle of life and death, then he could completely risk his life to die once and allow his body to recover to its peak condition. Then, Gu Dawi would really not be able to do anything at all. In reality, he hadn't even circulated the indestructible true fluid yet. This single drop was enough to heal all of his injuries. It was just that his origin power wouldn't be able to recover. He still had trump cards, but Gu Dawi didn't. In this battle, he would be the victor in the end. Fight, fight, fight. Gu Dawi was about to go mad. He clearly knew that his immortal origin energy was being rapidly consumed and could only last him for another 10 breaths time at most. Victory or defeat would be decided in this little bit of time. Boom. He attacked recklessly, brandishing his Saint King tool. He completely didn't care whether his attack would kill Ling Han. At this moment, he only had a single thought: victory. This surpassed everything else. But Ling Han's defense caused him to despair. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 9 breaths, 10 breaths, Gu Daoi's power instantly retreated like the tide. His immortal origin energy was completely exhausted, and he fell from the summit of the clouds back to the mortal realm. Stop! Just at this moment, a delicate shout was heard. Lady Saint Mother! The students didn't recognize this voice, but all the teachers did, especially the few in the academy. They hurriedly shot out and flew onto the stage, stopping the battle. The words of the Saint Mother were, to a certain extent, the will of the Star Sand Saint. Who dared to disobey? Saint Mother! All the students were confused. The wife of the saint, or the mother of the saint? Ling Han frowned. What was Zhu Xiu doing here again? Under everyone's gazes, Zhu Xiu walked gracefully, slowly ascending onto the stage and said, "The victor has been decided, aren't you going to announce it?" The victor had been decided? Weren't they still fighting? The teachers couldn't understand the situation. Which side was the Saint Mother siding with? However, there was no lack of clever people here, and they immediately understood. She definitely wasn't siding with Ling Han, because Ling Han would win in a few more moves. Did he need the Saint Mother to appear? Ahem! Immediately, a teacher cleared his throat. I announce that the first place in the tournament of new students is Gu Daoi. There was an uproar. Everyone was discerning, and could see that Ling Han had already defended well. Next, it would be time for his powerful counterattack, so how could he be judged as the loser? Gu Daoi was also stunned. He didn't recognize Zhu Xiu at all, so why would she help him? But he naturally didn't want to lose, even if it was because of someone else's help. Because he simply didn't say a single word. Ling Han naturally wasn't convinced and said, "May I ask, where did I lose?" Where did he lose? These teachers, you, anyone could tell. Gu Daoi was already at the end of his tether, and Ling Han was like a ferocious tiger coming out of its cage, about to draw his sword. The time of the tournament is only 1 day and 1 night. Since the victor has not been decided in the stipulated time, whoever has the advantage, Zhu Xiu answered. Yet Zhu Xiu answered, just now, everyone could clearly see that Gu Daoi had the absolute upper hand, so he naturally won. Saying that was not wrong. Previously, Gu Daoi had indeed had the initiative, but the problem was, how could they have fought for a full day and night? The moon hadn't risen to the middle of the sky yet, and there were still 6 to 8 hours until the day and night, which was still very early. But since the Saint Mother had said so, who dared to refute? If she said the sun was square, then it was square. If she said ice was hot, then it was hot. So what if she called a deer a horse? More importantly, she had already made her stance clear, so who dared to refute her? What? She's actually the Star Sand Saint's wife? Moreover, she even bore the great saint a son. Fuck, no wonder even so many teachers are so respectful to her even though she has clearly just broken through to the heavenly body tier. Some people were well informed, and had already mingled with the pilgrims here in the past few days in the ancient academy. Naturally, they wouldn't be unaware of the existence of a great goddess like Zhu Xiu. Once they said it, it immediately caused a commotion. This status was too high. A teacher spoke up and said, "The Saint Mother has already spoken, so who still dares to have any objections? Disperse. The first place is Gu Daoi, and whoever dares to speak nonsense will not be forgiven easily." Everyone was silent like cicadas in winter. That was the great saint's wife, and it wasn't just a title, but a noble person who had given birth to a son. A mother's status depended on her son, and it was enough to ensure her glory for generations to come. "They do," Ling Han said loudly. He definitely wouldn't submit. Otherwise, why would he have needed to oppose Zhu Xiu head-on at the beginning? At the beginning, if he had just given in, there would have been nothing else. Powerful and sonorous, more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 1502. I have an objection, but I'm not convinced. Ling Han's figure was like a mountain, unyielding and unyielding. Blood could flow, but pride would rather be broken than bent. As the crowd watched, Ling Han was undoubtedly a lone figure, but as he stood there, he had the aura of looking down on the world. Although there were millions of people, he would advance. All of a sudden, everyone was moved by his elegance, and the whole place was silent. So what if you're not convinced? Zhu Xiu said disdainfully. Not to mention the few teachers here, even if the 9 saints were here, who would dare to refute her? Did they want to betray their masters? I'll just ask, who thinks I've lost? Ling Han's gaze swept over, and no one dared to meet his eyes, lowering their heads. I'm not convinced. Empress Luan Xing was the first to step onto the stage. Fuck, dared to bully her beloved? No matter who you are, beat it up. She stared at Zhu Xiu, her imperial might and suffocating charm intertwining, and even Zhu Xiu couldn't help but lower her head, feeling ashamed of her inferiority. I'm not convinced either. I'm not convinced either. I'm not convinced either. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Rain Emperor, Zhu Ding Ping, and the others all stepped onto the stage. Not only them, but even Zi Chenfeng, second in the world, Long Xiangyue, and other rank 3 king tiers leaped onto the stage. They only respected the strong. Using strength to win, they had nothing to say, but using power to bully others, no one would be convinced. Since that was the case, then what was the point of competing? A competition had to be fair, and whoever was stronger would be first. This was a universally acknowledged principle among king tiers. I'm not convinced either. Another person leaped onto the stage. He wasn't a friend of Ling Han, nor was he a rank 3 king tier. In fact, he didn't even know Ling Han, but he stepped onto the stage of his own accord. Ling Han is first. Heavy sentence. More people stepped onto the stage. There were only 900 new students this time, but there were already more than 100 people on the stage to support Ling Han, and there were still people on the stage. The young king tiers were already full of hot blood, and now that it was ignited, it couldn't be extinguished. Wow, all of you want to rebel? Zhu Xiu said coldly. All of you, get off the stage. I'll count to 3, and whoever remains on the stage will be kicked out of the academy. She definitely had this kind of authority. If she wanted to expel a few people, would the 9 saints be able to object? But what she didn't expect was that it would have been better if she hadn't said it. As soon as she said it, even more people jumped onto the arena. Fine, let's do it. If you can't even maintain this level of fairness, what's the point of staying here? That's right. If I submit today, it will definitely leave behind an inner demon. Will I still have any hope of becoming a saint in the future? Everyone said in unison. Why did everyone enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy? Isn't it just becoming a saint? Otherwise, many of them had the backing of a saint. Why would they come here? However, if they left their inner demons behind, they would have no hope of becoming saints. If so, why had they been forced to crawl through the dog hole more than a year ago? Which one of them did not have accumulated resentment in their hearts? Through today's incident, their resentment had completely exploded. A king cannot be insulted 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, 500 people. Almost everyone had ascended the arena. Zhu Xiu couldn't help but reveal a cold glint in her eyes. Since these people were disobedient, then she would expel them all. Did they really think they were so great? She sneered and was about to open her mouth, but right at this moment, a wave of pressure assaulted her, causing her to be completely unable to speak. This time, first place goes to Ling Han. A voice rang out, sounding like the will of heaven and earth. This was a saint, the Star Sand Saint. Zhu Xiu's face immediately turned livid. She had never thought that her man would actually slap her hard at this moment. But no matter how dissatisfied she was, how could she dare to object at this time? Her status and power had all come from the Star Sand Saint, and the Star Sand Saint would only need to say a single word, and she would fall from the pinnacle of the clouds to the bottom of the valley. Without the halo of the Holy Mother, she was only at the heavenly body tier, and could barely be considered an elite. Since the great sage had spoken, no one had any objections. Moreover, this was a well-deserved title. Ling Han should have been number 1 in the first place. Instantly, everyone began to cheer. The Star Sand Saint had made a fair decision, which was equivalent to supporting them. This caused them to feel elated. Gu Daoi's expression was ugly. All the teachers' expressions were ugly. They were the losers in this farce. Ling Han, Ling Han, Ling Han. Everyone loudly called out the same name, pushing the atmosphere to the extreme. Ling Han broke into a smile and raised his arms to express his thanks to the crowd. He didn't know whether the Star Sand Saint would have interfered in the end without the support of these people, but this matter made him yearn for power more and more. Zhu Xiu only had the support of a great sage, yet she dared to detain him and distort the truth in front of countless people. What if a great sage did the same? Personal strength was the most important thing. Ling Han watched as Zhu Xiu left angrily. He watched as Gu Daoi left the arena with a dark expression. He watched as the teachers left with sullen expressions. Though this victory had originally been his in the first place, with Zhu Xiu's actions, he had offended all the teachers. If they were offended, so be it. In any case, he didn't expect anything from them. Ling Han didn't wait for Wei Zhen either. He directly returned to the 8th campus with Empress Luan Xing and the others. In any case, this teacher wouldn't be happy to see him, so what was the point of leaving with him? Because they had quietly returned ahead of the main group, they actually didn't alert anyone in the academy. Ling Han directly went to the library and chose a new killing formation. If he encountered Gu Daoi again, he wouldn't give him any chance and would directly kill him. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden followed Ling Han to the 8th campus. In any case, cultivators would cultivate in seclusion for hundreds of years, so it was fine even if they didn't stay in their own academy for many years. It was fine as long as the resources were still distributed. Ling Han chose for a long time, and finally decided on the Blood Crow formation that he wanted to choose. This was an extremely high-level formation among level 15 formations, and its might was comparable to the peak stage of the high extreme. Then, if he combined 10 formations into one, then even if it didn't reach the peak stage of the consummate level, the middle stage and late stage could still be imagined. As long as he branded this killing formation, he would be able to battle even against a cultivator at the peak stage of the consummate level. It wouldn't be like when he had fought against Wei Zhen, where he had needed to calculate all the traps and had only managed to land a strike when Wei Zhen was careless. He returned to his residence, entered into the Black Tower, and began to comprehend this formation under the reincarnation tree. He wanted to completely comprehend this formation as quickly as possible. 7 days later, Wei Zhen returned with his team. The senior students had been waiting for a long time. However, when they approached aggressively, they discovered that Ling Han wasn't among them. This made them feel as if they had punched thin air. As it turned out, Ling Han had already left. Subsequently, news of the final battle between Ling Han and Gu Daoi also spread, including Zhu Xiu's distortion of the truth, Ling Han's unyielding words, and finally, the uproar of the masses. The great saint had personally spoken to set things right. This caused the blood of the senior students to boil with excitement. Although the majority of them still couldn't let go of their traditions, they couldn't help but give Ling Han a big thumbs up. If it weren't for the fact that he was stubborn and unyielding, and had crawled through the dog's hole on the first day of entering the academy, would he still have been so unyielding when facing Zhu Xiu? In a sense, wasn't the great sage's statement praising Ling Han's resistance? Chapter 1504. Actually, the Star Sand Saint had long since wanted to take Gu Daoi as his disciple. In his eyes, a divine fetus was the most top-grade physique in this world, and with his careful nurturing, not only would Gu Daoi be able to inherit his mantle in the future, but he might even surpass him and advance into the Saint King tier that he had always dreamed of. It was impossible for him to take this step himself, but if he could personally nurture such an invincible supreme being, he would be able to die in peace. Taking a step back, if he managed to nurture a Saint King, Gu Daoi would definitely have to remember their past relationship. Then, even if he passed away, his son would have an incredibly reliable backer in the future. However, the Star Sand Saint didn't know that Gu Daoi wouldn't accept his kindness. Gu Daoi was a severing mundane ancestor, and he only lacked time and resources to enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. When Gu Dao came, everyone in the immortal realm was an ant. Would he go and take care of an ant? What a joke! At first, the Star Sand Saint would not accept a disciple so quickly. Wouldn't that be equivalent to making the other students bitterly disappointed? But this time, Gu Daoyi had been defeated by Ling Han, and he was afraid that Gu Daoyi would be disheartened and waver in his determination of martial art. Thus, he decided to immediately accept Gu Daoyi as his disciple. This was equivalent to saying that the great saint cared about Gu Daoyi's future. So what if he lost for a while? Which powerhouse hadn't lost before reaching the peak of martial art? Climbing the peak of martial art wasn't about a momentary sprint, but long-term endurance. What's the use of getting halfway up the hill as fast as you can? What kind of insight did great saints have? Moreover, great saints represented the will of the heaven and earth. Now that the Star Sand Saint had made such an announcement, it was equivalent to slashing down on everyone on behalf of the heaven and earth, cutting off their hopes of becoming a saint. This naturally made people panic, and many people even thought of dropping out of school. Hadn't he entered the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy to fight for the position of the final true disciple of the Star Sand Saint so that he could become a saint? Now that this candidate had already been decided, what was the point of him remaining here? Absolutely not. Ling Han immediately wanted to stop him. What a joke, he wanted to set a trap for Gu Daoyi, but what if by the time he came back, everyone in the Martial Arts Academy had already fled? How could he still spread the news then? Running over to invite Gu Daoyi directly? Do you really think I'm stupid? Ling Han thought about it and ran out. He began to shout loudly, telling everyone not to waver. So what if the saint had personally appointed him? Man could conquer nature. He might not succeed even if he fought for it, but he would never succeed if he didn't fight for it. Everyone was able to enter into the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, which meant that their aptitude was top-notch, and they all had hopes of becoming saints. How could their conviction be broken because of a single sentence from another? Moreover, it would be easier to surpass Gu Daoyi if there was a target in front of him. These words caused the entire 8th campus to boil with excitement. Indeed, as long as Gu Daoyi had not become a saint, everything was still too early. Moreover, there was no advantage in going back to cultivate. On the contrary, there were many kings here. Not only could he stimulate his fighting spirit, but there were also people to spar with. Many people had the style of nurturing themselves through battle. The more they fought, the stronger they would become. When they returned home, they would be invincible, but that also meant that they would stagnate. If they stayed, even if they lost, they could not run away. They had to lose while standing. If it was anyone else, the words of these people definitely would not carry such weight, but Ling Han was different. His reputation as a troublemaker had been earned through fighting, and not long ago he had obtained the first place among the new students, surpassing Gu Daoyi. In the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, in terms of strength, Ling Han still could not be classified among the big shots, but in terms of reputation he was faintly already catching up to the big shots. These words spread from the 8th campus to the other campuses, greatly motivating everyone. Though there were still some people who chose to leave, the majority stayed. In any case, there were many people recruited this time, and even if a few hundred people left, there would still be slightly more people than in previous years. Only then did Ling Han breathe a sigh of relief. Later, he would concoct a Saint King-level treasure trove. At that time, it would definitely cause a commotion in the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, and everyone would be talking about it. Then, he would get some items from the celestial realm that only Gu Daoyi recognized, making him think that it was a celestial-level treasure trove, and he would definitely be tempted. He somewhat admired his quick-wittedness. Just like that, he had pacified him. Sigh, for the sake of his wife, he was also going all out. Ling Han brought the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden with him, and prepared to set out. After leaving the academy, he would use the cloud-piercing shuttle to embark on a galactic journey, but they had just stepped out when they were blocked by a large group of senior students. Ling Han. A senior student walked out. He was in the peak stage of the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. Previously, even those in the medium extreme could not stop Ling Han, so now, they naturally could only send out those in the high extreme. Furthermore, they were in the peak stage, and their battle prowess had soared to the consummate level. This was still not enough to suppress Ling Han. He did not believe that. What is it? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and saw that these senior students' expressions were very complicated. They were no longer as enraged as before, looking like they wanted to beat and kill him the moment they approached. "We have also heard some things about you, and have to say that we are impressed," the senior student continued. "How about this? I'll give you an exception. You don't have to crawl through the dog's hole, but tradition cannot be abandoned. You apologize in front of everyone, admit your weakness, and in future, you will truly be a part of the 8th campus." This was also because all of Ling Han's previous actions were too admirable, especially when he dared to question the Holy Mother, Zhu Xiu. Even the big shots had to raise their thumbs and admit their inferiority. No, even the 9 saints had to admit their inferiority. Thus, the senior students took the biggest step back, and no longer requested to take Ling Han down a notch. However, this matter could not be dropped just like that, so Ling Han also had to take a step back, and in future, they would be a family. In their minds, Ling Han would definitely agree to this. After all, Ling Han's cultivation level was too low, and for at least 1,000,000 years, he would be restricted by the high extreme and consummate level of the Eternal River Tier, as well as the 4 big shots. They did not believe that you could endure 1,000,000 years of being blocked at your door all day long. Ling Han did not even think, directly shook his head, and said, "I will not apologize." What kind of joke was this? What did he do wrong? He did not do anything wrong at all. Since that was the case, why should he apologize? If he had done something wrong, he would admit it, but he had not done it, so what right did he have to lower his head? Previously, when he questioned Zhu Xiu, wasn't it the same? Even the might of a great saint could not make him lower his head. What more trash like you all? Seeing the determined expression on Ling Han's face, the senior students all had ugly expressions. They had already taken such a big step back, and Ling Han was actually not willing to take even a small step back. One had to understand, it was only asking you to apologize in front of the whole campus. Was this your humiliation? No, being able to make all the senior students concede, and make you only apologize, you have the upper hand. Why did he still not agree? This was too much. The face of the leading senior student involuntarily darkened, and he said, "Junior brother Ling, I have said all the good things, but you still do not listen. Then I can only use force." He moved. Boom! Suddenly, a massive palm appeared in the sky, grabbing at Ling Han. There were tens of thousands of stars entwined around it, and merely the aura that it exuded was enough to make those in the low extreme of the Eternal River Tier collapse. Ling Han brandished his fist, and a blood crow appeared, flapping its wings to greet the large palm. As its wings spread, innumerable feathers turned into swords that shot out, bringing with them the power of time, wanting to forcibly tear the blue sky apart. Chapter 1505. Daring to fight senior brother Yanqing head-on? Where did his courage come from? Senior brother Yanqing was a rank 2 king tier, and presently stood at the peak of the high extreme of the Eternal River Tier. Even if Ling Han was a rank 3 king tier, so what? The two of them were separated by a whole 3 minor levels. How could the gap between a rank 2 and a rank 3 king tier be made up for? If Ling Han took to his heels and fled, then they were both in the Eternal River Tier, and their speed was about the same. Yanqing really did not have the confidence to stop Ling Han, but fighting head-on. He. Seeking humiliation, the large hand pressed down, as if the heavens were falling. The blood crow met it, and its blood feathers were like arrows. Shio. The blood feathers hit the large hand first, and that terrifying large hand immediately began to disintegrate, while the blood feathers did not decrease, continuing to shoot towards Yanqing. Seeing this scene, the other senior students were all scared silly. What was going on? Yanqing was also greatly shocked, and hurriedly waved his hands, blasting at these blood feathers. Green River Formation. He roared loudly, and the bones all over his body lit up. A green light surged out from his forehead, forming a large formation around him. The disciples of the 8th campus naturally all cultivated body-forming formations. Green River Formation, a level 15 formation, could also be ranked in the top 10 among level 15 formations, but it was only 10th, not in the top 5, nor in the top 3. It was not that Yanqing did not want to brand a stronger formation, but that his body could not support it. However, the level of the Green River Formation was also frighteningly high. An ordinary high extreme of the Eternal River tier could only brand a killing formation ranked below 50th, and was not a match for him at all. Heavens, senior brother Yen was actually forced to use the Green River Formation. This little junior brother is really nature-defying, forcing senior brother Yen to such a state with just one move. However, it is only so. The Green River Formation can be ranked in the top 10 among level 15 killing formations. Once this formation is used, only a few senior brothers in the consummate level can match it. Indeed, the killing formations ranked in the top 10 are actually not inferior to some low-ranked level 16 killing formations. Everyone shook their heads, naturally thinking that Ling Han would definitely lose. Meanwhile, Empress Luan Xing and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden were brimming with confidence. They knew what level the Blood Crow formation that Ling Han had inscribed was at. It was the number 1 killing formation among the 15th rank, and there was no doubt about it. Xiao, 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 the blood feathers flew over, but they couldn't break through the Green River Formation's defense. This was within everyone's expectations. It would be strange if they could break it. Even Yen Qing revealed a proud expression. He wondered if he was too nervous and made a big fuss over a minor issue. No matter what, Ling Han's realm was there for all to see. However, in the next moment, his expression changed drastically. The blood crow attacked. With just a swipe of its beak, a hole was torn open in the Green River Formation. It flew straight in as if there was no one there. This Yen Qing hurriedly activated the array formation and infused his essence energy into it, wanting to neutralize this attack. However, the blood crow seemed to be impervious to all tribulations. No matter what attack it struck, it would immediately turn to ash. As it flapped its wings, it had already pounced in front of him. Bamian Qing was immediately sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. It was like a blood-colored rainbow, incomparably beautiful. He fell to the ground. The whole place was silent. Everyone was deeply stunned. Was Ling Han on steroids, or had he taken drugs? He was really too ferocious, wasn't he? Yen Qing gritted his teeth as he crawled to his feet. There was no shame of losing to a junior on his face. Instead, he pointed a finger at Ling Han, his expression filled with shock. Blood Crow Formation, you fused with the Blood Crow Formation. Pooh. Instantly, a great many people spluttered. The originally deathly silence was immediately broken. Everyone exclaimed in shock, their expressions filled with disbelief. Blood Crow Formation. Ranked first among the level 15 formations. Impossible. I don't believe it either. Even senior brother Ren Feiyun only fused with the 7th-ranked Fire Wind Scarlet Cloud formation when he was in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. Senior brother Kai Miao fused with the 8th-ranked Black Tortoise Golden Sun formation. Senior brother Qi Tian is extraordinarily talented and has a special physique. He fused with the 6th-ranked Ice Silkworm Black Destruction formation. The most powerful senior sister Yu only fused with the 5th-ranked White Tiger Six Paths formation. It's said that the top 3 killing formations can't be fused with the body, because the body can't bear it at all. Everyone clutched their heads, unable to believe it. They didn't dare to believe it. Junior brother Ling, that's the Blood Crow formation. Yen Qing only wanted to confirm this point. Since this move had been used, even if he didn't say it now, others would figure it out in future. Ling Han nodded and said, that's right. It really was the Blood Crow formation. It was nature-defying, someone had actually succeeded. Hold on. Someone's eyes suddenly widened. He's only in the low extreme of the Eternal River tier. Gasp! It was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. Previously, everyone was only shocked that someone could fuse with the Blood Crow formation, and were stunned by this inconceivable fact. But now that they were reminded of this, they realized that there was something even more terrifying. Ling Han was only in the low extreme of the Eternal River tier, and according to reason, he could only fuse with level 13 formations. Fuck, are you going to be super awesome? Everyone's mouths were wide open, their tongues hanging out. Only this could slightly express the shock in their hearts at this moment. Even if 10,000 alpacas galloped past, it wouldn't be able to calm their wildly beating hearts. If you really reached the high extreme of the eternal river tier, wouldn't you be able to fuse with saint-level formations? But they were thinking too much. Firstly, the gap between saint level was too great. Ling Han would only be able to raise the strength of his godly bones to saint level if he cultivated to the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier. Secondly, saint-level formations needed to grasp the corresponding regulations of heaven and earth, and that required the cultivation level of saint level. Even if Ling Han had formed godly bones that were like divine metal, it would still be useless. But it was precisely because they didn't know that they were even more shocked. That was because, going by this analogy, if Ling Han advanced into the consummate level of the eternal river tier, he would even be able to slaughter saints. Ling Han glanced at the senior students that were all petrified, snapped his fingers, and said, "Wife, let's go." The Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden accompanied him on his left and right. Ling Han was full of pride. This was much more awe-inspiring and domineering than when he had just defeated Yan Qing. Exiting the academy, Ling Han drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle, but it could only accommodate 2 people. Empress Luanxing entered the Black Tower first, allowing Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to have a good heart-to-heart talk. This wife was really good at understanding and incredibly considerate. As Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden chatted, the clothes on their bodies disappeared. Though the space inside the cloud-piercing shuttle was not big, and it was a little difficult to move freely, there were still advantages to being small. There was a different kind of excitement. At the peak of their passion, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden bit Ling Han's shoulder and said, "I want to give birth to a monkey for you. Then we'll have to do it a few more times." Ling Han said seriously and began the second and third round of conquest. Since his wife had a request, he naturally had to do his best and work hard. They were lovey-dovey and did not feel that time was slow. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed, and the cloud-piercing shuttle stopped. It had already arrived at the designated galactic coordinates. Why is there nothing here? Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 1506. This was a desolate universe, and the closest celestial body was at least billions of kilometers away. Even the cloud-piercing shuttle had to travel for 10 days to half a month. Ling Han stood in the starry sky. There was nothing around him. Where were the treasures? Where did the treasures come from? Did you remember wrongly? Empress Luanxing asked. Ling Han shook his head. Impossible. With his memory, how could he have remembered the wrong coordinates? Wait. He suddenly paused. There's another incantation, but I couldn't recognize it at all back then. I thought it was nonsense. Just like when a saint imparted Tao, explaining the regulations of heaven and earth, could a shattering void-tier cultivator understand? It was like playing the lute to a cow. Back then, Ling Han was the same. When he received this magic art, it was like a bunch of nonsense. It didn't make sense at all. He tried hard to recall, but his mouth uttered strange syllables. Aha! Empress Luanxing faltered and said, "My body is actually reacting to these words?" Ling Han stopped. What reaction? I don't know either, but I have a feeling that I should know these words. Empress Luanxing suddenly stopped and looked Ling Han in the eye. Immortal text, the two of them said at the same time. That should be the case. Empress Luanxing was a member of an ancient divine tribe, and her ancestors had been exiled from the celestial realm, but their bloodline was still passed down through the generations. Then, when she heard the celestial text, her bloodline might be able to respond. Fuck, it can't be that I guessed it, right? Ling Han was tongue-tied. This time, he had mainly set a trap for Gu Daoyi, and because he had already grasped a considerable number of techniques from the celestial realm and also possessed the Black Tower, he actually did not have much greed for the so-called mystery realms of the immortal realm. Therefore, although he knew about the existence of this arcane realm, he did not take any action. In order to lure Gu Daoyi out, he even wanted to fake this place as a celestial-level mystery realm. This was not strange. In the past, who knew how many people had been exiled from the celestial realm, So what was so strange about leaving behind a celestial-level mystery realm in the immortal realm? Celestial-level treasures, you, Gu Daoyi, should be tempted, right? Never would he have thought that the word, immortal domain, would actually be involved in this. Continue, the Empress said. Ling Han nodded and tried his best to recall. With his memory, even if he had only glanced at it, he would be able to slowly recall it. Mo luo jiefei, it's miaoing you. He continued to recite. Although it was only one line of the incantation, it was actually extremely long when he recited it. In the unseen world, a wave that even saints could not catch was surging in the universe. Because he couldn't catch it, Ling Han didn't feel any change after he finished reading it. I thought a door or a passage would appear after I finished chanting. Ling Han scratched his head in disappointment. Or perhaps a rift in space would appear, and a mystery realm would appear, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden continued. Meanwhile, the Empress asked, is it possible that you've misremembered a certain syllable? Impossible. Ling Han shook his head. He still had this much confidence. The Empress naturally would not question Ling Han. She pondered for a moment, then said, then why don't we observe here first? Also, recite it a few more times. All right. Ling Han nodded and repeated the incantation a few more times. Furthermore, he even used his origin power, sending it through the galaxy like a tidal wave. However, there was still not the slightest change. Wait for 3 days. All right. They waited patiently for 3 days, but there was still no change at all. Ling Han, wait for another 3 days, he said after a moment's thought. All right. The Empress and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden naturally had no objections. Another 3 days passed and there was still no change at all. The last 3 days. Ling Han gritted his teeth. They waited and very soon, a month had passed. Ling Han and the others wanted to leave every 3 days, but they were afraid that a miracle would happen in the next moment, so they continued to wait for 3 days and 3 days. This time, it will definitely be the last 3 days. Ling Han patted his chest and guaranteed. He was also annoyed. All right. The Empress, meanwhile, was always smiling. She would not refuse any request from Ling Han. Could it be that the treasure has already been taken? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked doubtfully. It shouldn't be. Ling Han pondered. The tool spirits of the 12 palaces had once said very clearly that though there had been people who had obtained these galactic coordinates before, they had all died later on. Furthermore, it was the 5 sects that had controlled the lower realm at that time. If it was the 5 sects that had obtained these galactic coordinates, Ling Han did not believe that they had the ability to open this mystery realm. Whether they could even come here was an unknown. Ling Han and Empress Luanxing paused at the same time. With the senses of their eternal riveteers, they had already discovered something unusual. What is it? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked. Ling Han and the Empress both looked toward a corner of the galaxy and then stretched out a finger. There. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden looked into the distance with all her strength, but did not see anything. But she knew that Ling Han and the Empress would definitely not lie to her, so she continued. Now that she had not found it, it should be because her vision and senses were not strong enough. At least after a few breaths' time, they saw a spot of light appear there, and then rapidly enlarge. Ling Han and the Empress were the first to draw in a sharp breath. What had they found? In the dark starry sky, there were 3 phoenixes flapping their wings. Each phoenix was larger than a mountain, and even though they were flying side by side, their wings were tens of thousands of miles long. Thus, there was a distance of tens of thousands of miles between each phoenix. They had not even flown close, and there was already an indescribably huge pressure assaulting them. That was saintly might. True phoenixes were existences that stood on equal footing with true dragons, and were outstanding among divine beasts. Ling Han and the others were all greatly shocked. With the vastness of the galaxy, the possibility of them coincidentally encountering 3 true phoenixes was close to 0. If it was too much of a coincidence, then it might not be a coincidence anymore. That part of the technique, it was not opening a treasure trove, but rather summoning 3 true phoenixes. Furthermore, They had been in an unknown distant place previously, so they had only flown here after 30 days. Saints could traverse the galaxy, and their speed was definitely faster than the cloud-piercing shuttle. They had to fly for 30 days, and how far away were they in the galaxy previously? The part of the technique had summoned 3 true phoenixes. What kind of concept was that? Even Ling Han and the others were slightly dumbfounded. Boom! A pair of wings suddenly unfurled behind the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. They were as long as 30,000 meters, but compared to those 3 true phoenixes, the gap was not just a little large. Even if their wings were 30,000 meters long, so what? They were still juniors. This was a little too grand. Though the Star Sand Saint had never appeared before, Ling Han had sensed his aura a few times, and could very clearly determine that this great saint was inferior to those 3 true phoenixes. Saint King Tyr, the strongest in the immortal realm. Even Ling Han felt slightly weak. He stretched out his hands, and grabbed onto the wrists of Empress Luan Xing and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden respectively. He could enter into the Black Tower at any time. How fast was the speed of Saint Kings? Every time the true phoenixes flapped their wings, they would be able to leave a boundless space behind them. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived in front of them. Ling Han and the others gaped at the same time. They were even more shocked than when they had seen the 3 true phoenixes previously. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 1508. These 7 people were all young men and 3 women. The men were handsome and the women were beautiful, exuding the unique aura of a king. Ancestor's prediction was right. There is a great fortune appearing here, a young man said. Naturally, the ancestor's prediction is unparalleled in the world. What secret treasure is this? I don't know, but since the ancestor sent us on this trip, it must not be simple. These are 3 Phoenix Kings, heavens. 3 Phoenix Kings as footwork, so extravagant. This kind of secret treasure must be extraordinary. Why has the chest been opened? No matter, the ancestor said that the fortune is in the chest. Even if someone got it first, with the power of the 7 of us, is there anyone below the saint that we can't deal with? I'm just afraid that a saint will make a move. Impossible, the ancestor has already concealed the secrets of heaven, and the treasure appearing will not attract the attention of a saint. Someone must have coincidentally arrived here. And no matter, let's go in immediately. However, the remains of the 3 Phoenix Kings outside, don't think about it, the remains of a Saint King are definitely not something we can covet. This time, though the ancestor predicted that a secret treasure would appear, he still miscalculated. If he knew that there were 3 Phoenix Kings, perhaps the ancestor would have personally come. That's right, though with our background, the secret treasure of a Saint King is only SOSO. It is still considerably valuable. No, I suddenly remembered 3 Phoenix Kings as a mount. This is the legendary secret treasure of the Heavenly River King. What? The person that we attacked together from the Forbidden Lands was said to be related to the Celestial Realm. The ancestor has miscalculated this time. This is the secret treasure of the Heavenly River King. To say nothing of the ancestor, even big shots on the same level as the ancestor would be tempted. What do we do? The treasure is right in front of us, so how can we not take it? Though the ancestor has concealed the secrets of heaven, time is limited. Right, let's take the secret treasure first. The 7 of them were all incredibly excited. This was the legendary treasure left behind by the Heavenly River King, and could be said to be one of the most valuable treasures in the whole immortal realm, and every true big shot would be tempted. They entered the box one by one. They didn't have to be as cautious as Ling Han and Li Mu, who had to test the water first. This was because they had received instructions from a big shot in the family and knew that there was no danger. Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing did not know that a guest had arrived. In their minds, with how vast the universe was, even the 3 Phoenix Kings were incredibly insignificant in comparison. The chances of them being encountered by a passing starship should be 0. They looked at the mountaintop. That giant claw should have belonged to some kind of demonic beast. It had been severed at the wrist, and fresh blood was still gushing out. It was incomparably viscous, like red agate. It reflected the light, giving off a magnificent feeling. Even if it was just a broken claw, it still gave off a suffocating feeling. One could totally imagine how powerful the owner of this claw was. It was said that the Heavenly River King had died after being ganged up on by a great many powerful enemies. That had to have been the most powerful group of people in the whole immortal realm. Just think about those 3 dead true phoenixes outside. Just how astonishing of a power was needed to be able to kill them. "Come on, let's go to the top," Ling Han said. There was more than one mountain here, but it was clear that the mountain in front of Ling Han and his group was the most eye-catching. That giant claw really stood out too much. The 3 of them had just taken a step up the mountain when they immediately felt a frightening murderous aura rushing over. Ling Han was fine, but the Empress did not have a physique as strong as his. She felt the mountain wind as sharp as blades, and her origin power instinctively activated, forming a shield around her. This had to be because of that claw on the mountaintop. As the wind blew past, it brought with it some blood, causing the mountain wind to also carry a frightening murderous aura, and its destructive power was astonishing. Meanwhile, the Azura Demon Emperor directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and was sent flying. It should be known that both Ling Han and Empress Luanxing had advanced into the Eternal River tier, and that was merely a broken claw, yet it made the Empress feel as if she was facing a great enemy. From this, it could be seen how powerful the owner of this claw had been when he was alive. Ling Han drew the Azura Demon Emperor into the Black Tower, and walked along the mountain path with the Empress. The mountain path was not rugged, and was paved with an unknown metal, extending all the way to the mountaintop. There was a palace there, but it was precisely the target of the giant claw's attack, and more than half of it had already been destroyed. Ling Han was startled, and couldn't help but squat down. "This is level 16 godly metal, level 16. It was only one step away from becoming saintly material, but it was actually used as a step. How extravagant was that?" After a moment of shock, Ling Han laughed loudly. His divine demon sword just so happened to need to swallow high-level godly metal to level up. Though it could not use high-end level 16 goods now, if he completely refined such a long row, it would be enough to level up from level 16 to level 17 in one go. Awesome! He began to pry open the steps. Taking away the whole mountain was impossible, but prying down the steps and then taking them away was no difficulty at all. Only a person with a tough physique like him could withstand the terrifying mountain winds while digging the stairs. Though the Empress wanted to help, she soon found that she had to stand at the side with great difficulty. She did not have enough origin power at all. "You rest, I'll do it," Ling Han said with a smile. He could not bear to let his wife do this kind of rough work. Her skin was so soft and tender. He was now very excited, and worked very happily. The divine demon sword was like a bottomless pit now, and being able to fill up a part of it made him extremely happy. What a pity! Why is there no level 11 godly metal? Now, I can only keep these godly metal, I have no use for them. As he dug, he was still mumbling. This was taking advantage of him, but he was still showing off. The Empress couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh, her body trembling slightly, extremely charming. But just at this moment, the 2 of them paused at the same time, and discovered that there were suddenly a few more auras here. They looked towards the foot of the mountain, and saw that 7 people had appeared out of thin air there. They were all young men and women, full of heroic spirit like true dragons and true phoenixes. Feng. Ling Han stopped, showing a hint of killing intent. "Don't be nervous, sister is under the protection of 3 Saint King-level true phoenixes. Even if a great saint came, he might not be able to harm her," the Empress immediately consoled. Ling Han nodded. He was confused because he was too concerned. "These people have come too coincidentally," he said. Eternal River Tears did not have the ability to force the chariot pulled by 3 Phoenix Kings to stop, so they must have just happened to pass by here. This coincidence was practically boundless. Ling Han continued to dig. They were merely Eternal River Tears, so he did not take them to heart. The 7 people below began to ascend the mountain. This path is really broken," someone complained. "It seems like the steps have been dug away by someone." "How is that possible?" The women all shook their heads. If they wanted to rob someone, they would rob that palace above. Who would have the idea of robbing the steps? That was too unscrupulous. Furthermore, it was their ancestor who had attacked this place previously, so how could they have such low standards? Robbing even the steps, they must have gone crazy from poverty. Yes, it should have been destroyed in battle. The other men all nodded. However, this appearance was a little too different from being destroyed in battle. But if it was said that the ancestor and the others had really made a move then so be it, but they clearly had not succeeded, so where would they have had the time to even remove the steps? Strange, it was really strange. They continued to ascend the mountain, and very soon arrived at Ling Han, who was working hard at digging. All of a sudden, their eyes were bulging out, and their mouths were gaping wide. Fuck, there really were people so poor that they had gone crazy, not even sparing the steps. Chapter 1509. You're really too inexperienced. Can't you see that there's a palace at the top? The things hidden inside are definitely more valuable than what you're digging now. How ignorant are you? Short-sighted. In an instant, the 7 of them labeled Ling Han as a country bumpkin. Only this kind of person would want to dig even as far as the golden steps. Though they were also slightly tempted. This was level 16 godly metal, and it had paved a mountain path. This extravagance, it was too astonishing. They resisted the terrifying mountain winds, and very soon neared. Tisk. When it was Empress Luanxing's turn, everyone showed stunned expressions. Even the 3 women's mouths were half agape, their eyes widened. Though they were proud of their stunning beauty, and were not convinced of each other's superiority, in front of the Empress, they had no choice but to concede defeat. This gap was not just a little, and they had no choice but to admit it. The 4 men were even worse off. 2 of them were even drooling, drenching their clothes, as if it was the first time that stupid boys had seen a woman. How could there be such a beauty in this world? Every frown and smile was perfect. Ahem. A young man was the first to come back to his senses and said, "I am who can, and these are my younger brothers and sisters. Since we can meet in the boundless galaxy, it means that we are fated. Why don't we explore this mystery realm together?" Hearing his words, the other 3 men all looked excited, while the 3 women's expressions darkened. They felt inferior in front of the Empress, so they were naturally unwilling to have all their attention drawn by the Empress. Logically speaking, if an outsider had appeared in such a mystery realm with such an astonishing background, their first reaction should be to silence them. But who asked the Empress to be so beautiful? Her beauty melted their hearts, and they actually suggested joining forces to explore the mystery realm. Empress Luanxing couldn't be bothered to speak. Her attention was only on Ling Han, and she ignored the others. Ling Han's eyes swept over them. He had already seen everyone from the low extreme of the Eternal River Tier to the consummate level of the Eternal River Tier. Thus, even if their cultivation level was higher than his, he could still determine their cultivation level through comparison. Among these 7 people, the one who spoke, Hukan, had the highest cultivation level. He had reached the peak stage of the consummate level. It was very possible that he was a young big shot that was not inferior to Ren Feiyun, Shi Tian, and the others. He was slightly surprised. In this vast galaxy, the Star Sand Saint should be revered. In that case, all the young king tiers that had the ambition to become saints should have entered the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. However, Ling Han was very unfamiliar with these 7 people. Furthermore, he did not notice the insignia of the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy on their clothes, so they should not be the senior brothers and sisters that had entered the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy 1 million or 2 million years ago. Moreover, these 7 people were too young. There was a huge difference of 1 or 2 million years. According to Ling Han's judgment, these 7 people should be less than 1 million years old. Not even 1 million years old, yet there was 1 in the consummate level of the Eternal River Tier, 2 in the early stage of the consummate level, 3 in the high extreme, and 1 in the medium extreme. This lineup was a little frightening. How could they nurture so many top-notch prodigies? Ling Han thought and said, "There's no need. We'll each rely on our own abilities." Hukan and his group instantly looked displeased. What kind of place did you think this was? If news of the mystery realm that the Heavenly River King had left behind spread, putting aside eternal river tears like them, even small saints, medium saints, or even great saints would not be qualified to enter. This was the stage of Saint Kings. Now, they were kind enough to invite these two people to explore with them. On one hand, it was because of the Empress, and on the other hand, it was also because they wanted to keep these two people under their eyes. After they were done, they would definitely bring them back to the Forbidden Land. What a joke! They had obtained the treasures left behind by the Heavenly River King. If news of this spread, wouldn't it draw the attention of the other Forbidden Lands? It should be known that the reason why the Grand Elders of the Forbidden Lands had besieged the Heavenly River King previously, wasn't it all for the sake of the hidden treasures here? How shameless! Brat, you are too insensible. The only one in the medium extreme of the Eternal River tier walked out. His name was Hu Bing. You really are a country bumpkin. You have absolutely no idea how much you are worth. This is the secret treasure trove of the Heavenly River King. It is already a great fortune for you to be able to enter, and you still want a share of the spoils? Hu Can and the others did not stop him. In their eyes, Hu Bing alone was enough to suppress this man and woman. It would be fine as long as he did not injure that exquisite beauty. Ling Han was surprised. These 7 people knew about the treasure trove of the Heavenly River King, and they knew about the situation here. That meant that they had not come here by chance. Ling Han couldn't help but feel interested and asked, "Where are you guys from?" "We." At first, Hu Bing was disdainful to waste words with Ling Han, but the extremely beautiful Empress also looked over, and there was a sliver of curiosity in her eyes. Suddenly his blood was fired up, and he very much wanted to show off. He opened his mouth and said, "We are from the 8 Stones Forbidden Land." What the hell was the 8 Stones Forbidden Land? Ling Han cast a look at the Empress, and the Empress shook her head slightly, indicating that she had never heard of it before. So, he deliberately goaded her. What 8 Stones Forbidden Land? It sounds like an indecent place, and would not produce any elites. They are all a bunch of country bumpkins. Country bumpkins. This time, Hu Can and the others were all annoyed. Who is a country bumpkin? Who is a country bumpkin? Who was the person currently digging steps in the ground? They were the biggest country bumpkin here, and actually dared to talk about others. Hu Bing could not hold back anymore and said, "You are a frog at the bottom of a well. Of course, it is impossible that you have heard of the Forbidden Lands. It should be known that our Forbidden Lands have existed since time immemorial, and at the time, our origins came from Hu Bing." Hu Can and the others shouted loudly at the same time, stopping Hu Bing from continuing. Only then did Hu Bing's face turn pale. Pointing at Ling Han, he exclaimed, "You dare to provoke me!" At first, he would not be so easily provoked, but who asked there to be an Empress by his side? She could make one's intelligence drop endlessly at any moment. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "You are the one who said it. Did I force you? Continue. Where did the origins of the Forbidden Lands come from?" "It has nothing to do with you," Hu Can continued. "Miss, my apologies. The treasure trove of the Heavenly River King is too astonishing. We have to ensure that the news will definitely not spread. I would like to trouble the 2 of you to stay by our side. When the matter has passed, the 2 of you will naturally be able to regain your freedom." Though he said so, he naturally had other plans in mind. That man, he could just think of a way to kill him, and that would do, and a woman all alone and without anyone to rely on, would that not be easy to get close to? Looking at the Empress' exquisite beauty, even he, a young king tier that was close to saint level, could not help but feel his heartbeat quicken, and he swallowed a few more mouthfuls of saliva. Too beautiful. He definitely had to settle it before he returned. Otherwise, there was a young big shot in his clan who had long since broken through to the saint level. If the other party also went up, what right would he have to compete? This meant that he was going to put the 2 of them under house arrest. Ling Han's thoughts turned, and he said, "We have come to the Great Ling Forbidden Land." He decided to lie to these people again. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 1510. Great Ling Forbidden Landy have never heard of it. Is there such a forbidden area? Hu Can and the others looked at each other, all shaking their heads, expressing that they had never heard of such a place. Even a country bumpkin like you could come from a forbidden land. Hu Bing snorted. How could there be someone from a forbidden land who had never seen the world like this? Instead of picking a watermelon, he was eyeing a sesame-sized step. Weren't you ashamed? However, Ling Han's way of thinking was different. This treasure trove was all his, so who cared where he started from? You guys haven't even heard of the Great Ling Forbidden Land? Aren't you all too old-fashioned? Ling Han retorted sarcastically. How could his mouth not be sharp after training with the large black dog? Is this guy? Hu Can's group of 7 exploded with rage. There was clearly no such forbidden land. You must be a fuck you imposter, and you actually dared to say that they were old-fashioned? Don't pester him endlessly, Hu Can said darkly. All right. Hu Bing nodded. His eyes turned to Ling Han, and a cold smile curled up the corners of his lips. He might not be good at spouting nonsense, but he had real skills. No matter how much you boast, can you boast to the sky? He moved and shot out a punch at Ling Han. Origin power condensed and turned into a stone fist. However, its might was pitifully weak, and at most, it was only at the low extreme of the eternal river tier. Why is it so low? It was very simple. The mountain winds here had a terrifying destructive power, and one had to use their origin power to protect themselves. Otherwise, their bodies would be torn apart. This was a type of rule power. Therefore, the stronger the opponent, the stronger the opponent. Even though there was a huge gap between the 7 of them in terms of cultivation, they basically had to go all out. However, he was weak, and so was his enemy. Thus, he was confident that even if he only unleashed an attack at the low extreme, he would be able to severely wound Ling Han, or even kill him. His opponent was only in the low extreme, too. Moreover, ordinary eternal river tiers would at most have 2 or 3 stars of battle prowess that surpassed their cultivation level. Now that he was even stronger, what did Ling Han have to block him? Hu Can and the other 5 crossed their arms, appearing very proud. They were kings that had walked out from forbidden grounds. Apart from the young prodigies of forbidden grounds, who else in the world could rival them? No, absolutely not. Ling Han very casually glanced at it and pointed out a finger. Then he once again began to dig up the stairs. He was very busy. Hu Bing was so angry that his hair stood on end. This is too arrogant. We are fighting and you are still digging. Damn it, will you die if you don't dig a little? In that case, you can go to hell. He pushed his stone fist forward, aiming to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han's finger turned into a stream of sword chi and slashed at the stone fist. Suddenly, the sword chi sank into the stone fist and the stone fist was forcibly sliced apart. It immediately changed the direction of its attack and slashed past Ling Han's left and right sides, causing no damage at all. However, the sword chi continued to slash towards Hu Bing, as if its power had not been weakened at all. Hu Bing was shocked. Under normal circumstances, he naturally would not be afraid of the attacks of those in the low extreme of the eternal river tier, but the problem was that he had now expended a large amount of origin power to defend against the mountain winds, and had also used his remaining origin power to attack just now, so there was no way he could put any more effort into defense. Though this attack was not strong, it just happened to be the last straw that broke the camel's back. A woman moved. She stretched out a palm, which turned into a jade-like palm that blocked in front of Hu Bing. Thank you, Big Sister Jing. Hu Bing was incredibly grateful. But before he finished, the sword chi had already struck. That jade-like palm shattered with a pa, and continued to slash towards Hu Bing. He had not expected this attack at all. At first, he had thought that with Hu Jing moving, it would definitely be neutralized. He could only watch as the attack arrived and slashed on his chest. A streak of blood immediately spurted out, and he was sent flying. Brother Bing! The 6 people called out at the same time, and all rushed out to catch Hu Bing. I'm fine, Hu Bing said with difficulty. Although Ling Han's attack was very powerful, after being blocked twice in a row, its might had decreased considerably. Naturally, it couldn't cause too much damage to him. The main reason was that the mountain winds here were too strong. Otherwise, he would not have been afraid of this attack. Hu Kan and the others all had ugly expressions. At first, they had thought that they could easily suppress that country bumpkin, but in the end, it was Hu Bing who had been wounded by a single attack. They were very surprised and felt even more embarrassed. Strange, everyone was obviously affected by the mountain winds, and none of them could unleash their strongest battle prowess. He was only in the low extreme, so how could he be so powerful? Could it be that he was really from some great Ling forbidden land? Otherwise, how could he have nurtured such a strong prodigy? Looks like we underestimated you. Hu Jing, who had moved to help Hu Bing previously, stood out. There was anger on her pretty face. She had already moved, yet she was still unable to protect Hu Bing, which made her feel annoyed. Ling Han ignored her and continued to dig out the steps. What kind of contempt was this? At this moment, Hu Jing really had the urge to kill. Yet Empress Luan Xing stood out and said, "My husband has no time for you. I'll exchange a few blows with you." Hu Jing's gaze was sinister. She hated Empress Luan Xing for stealing her limelight in the first place, and added with the anger she had received from Ling Han, it was perfect to vent it on this woman. She would not kill the other, but would leave a wound of great Tao that could not be erased on the other's face, and turn her into an ugly person forever. You still dare to flirt? She directly moved. With a soft shout, the mountains rumbled, and innumerable stone spikes protruded from the ground like spears, piercing towards Empress Luan Xing. The Empress was not Ling Han. She did not have an astonishing physique and would similarly be greatly restricted in this place, but she still had an absolute beginning stone, which was a god tool that could disperse all attacks. She rushed out. Pim 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 pim. As the bricks slammed down, everything was shattered. A great beauty was actually wielding a brick. This was definitely inappropriate, but the Empress's beauty crushed everything. Even if she was waving the brick, she was still beautiful, making one feel carefree and relaxed. She directly charged over and slammed the brick down on Hu Jing's face. Under the effect of the mountain wind, how could Hu Jing block it? She was sent flying and collapsed onto the ground with a loud crash. This time, her injuries were much more serious than Hu Bing's. She had to be helped to her feet, and the words, "Ancestor Wenxin," were shockingly printed on her face, making others laugh. But Hu Kan and the others did not have the slightest hint of a smile. They stared at the brick in the Empress's hand, and all frowned. Primordial stone. Hu Kan said in a deep voice. The Empress was cold and indifferent. She did not have any obligation to answer anyone. She was very proud. It can't be wrong. It must be a primordial stone. It can't be damaged by external forces and has inscriptions carved on it. It must be a primordial stone, a woman said with certainty. Her name was Hu Shuyu, and her cultivation base was at the early stage of great perfection. Snatch it! Everyone's eyes lit up. Although the primordial stone did not have much use, it was sometimes used to record some secrets due to its indestructible nature. Therefore, it could be passed down from generation to generation. Therefore, the primordial stone might contain amazing secret techniques. Taking a step back, even if there was no such thing, the primordial stone was too extraordinary in the divine realm. It could be used as a defensive treasure. Chapter 1512. Ling Han smiled and said, "Do you want to fight? Then let's fight." In this environment, he really had no need to fear the consummate level of the eternal river tier. Even if a pinnacle-level elite came, he was not without the ability to fight. Hu Kan took a deep breath. "Sir, you underestimate us too much. Do you really think that just because the environment here is disadvantageous to us, we are completely helpless? Humph, we are merely unwilling to pay a certain price. But, since you insist on provoking us, then I'll let you suffer the consequences of your actions." He channeled a secret technique, and suddenly, his muscles bulged out piece by piece. His clothes were torn, and a body completely formed from rock was revealed. His figure had also become a full 3 or 4 times larger. Though he was completely naked, a stone statue-like thing would not make one feel embarrassed. Brother Can has cultivated the 8 stones technique to the 2nd level. Once channeled, his physique is invincible, a woman said, filled with envy. This was the strongest secret technique of the Eight Stones tribe, and also their foundation. Though everyone had been taught it, they generally only learned the first level. The requirements for the second level were too high, and there were not many in the entire Eight Stones Forbidden Land who had successfully cultivated it. And Huken was one of them. Thus, he indeed had the right to be proud. Once this secret technique was channeled, the threat of the mountain winds to him immediately decreased greatly, allowing him to draw out more power to focus on his attacks. However, channeling this technique in the first place required the expenditure of some origin power, and added with the fact that the threat of the mountain winds had not been eliminated, he could at most use half of his strength. In his eyes, was half of his strength still not enough? Capture him. Huken moved, his figure charging towards Ling Han like a raging bull. Eight Stones Body, a secret technique of the celestial realm. Ling Han was unafraid. Competing with him in terms of physique, how foolish were you? He, too, took a step and charged, crashing towards Huken, seeking death. Huken humphed coldly. He did not mind killing Ling Han. In any case, it was enough to leave one alive to understand the situation. Furthermore, Ling Han was not a beauty, so what need was there for him to show mercy? He shot out a punch and multiple stone spikes emerged from his fist. They were incredibly sharp and pierced towards Ling Han's head. With a single strike, your body and soul will be annihilated. Ling Han also punched out, but sword intent circulated, and a blood crow flew out. If someone from Astral 8 was here, they would definitely exclaim in surprise. This was because this blood crow was hundreds of times larger than a normal blood crow formation. Was this still a blood crow? It was clearly a giant blood-colored bird. The blood crow flapped its wings and went up against Huken's fist. As its wings flapped, streams of sword chi shot out, and the power of time circulated. He combined the 10 formations into one, fused them with the tide of the ages, and blasted out with the lightning sword technique. Huken's expression immediately changed. This attack had not even reached him, and he already felt fear. Most importantly, he was unable to unleash his full power right now. Boom! The blood crows attacked, and Huken's fist immediately crumbled. Boundless sword chi swept out. Huken let out a muffled groan and retreated repeatedly. His body instantly reverted to its original form, fresh blood gushing out of his right fist. He was both furious and shocked. Damn it. If he could unleash his full power, he would definitely be able to suppress his opponent. But now, he had to use the majority of his power to resist the mountain wind. He could not unleash his full battle prowess at all, causing him to be defeated. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Surrender obediently. I still have many questions to ask you." "Don't even think about it." Huken sneered. Ling Han was surprised. "Do you want to bravely meet your deaths?" "Who said that?" Huken took out a talisman. Ling Han instantly froze. If this was a saint's decree, he still did not have the right to resist it. "Let's go." Huken tore the talisman, and a beam of light swept out. The 7 of them instantly disappeared without a trace. So it was an instant teleportation talisman. Ling Han arrived. They had not gone far, and had only arrived at the foot of the mountain. This was because this was a small space, and the level of the instant teleportation talisman was not as high as the spatial rules here. Thus, even if they teleported, they did not leave this mountain peak. However, there was no terrifying wind at the foot of the mountain. "Brat, do you dare come down for a battle?" they called out. There were 7 of them, and all of their cultivation level was above that of Ling Han and Huken, but they were still forced to flee like rats by the 2 of them. This was too embarrassing. If it was a battle at the foot of the mountain, they would be completely unafraid. "If you have the ability, come up." Ling Han continued to dig out the steps, and could not be bothered to deal with them. The 7 of them exploded in fury. This country bumpkin was really detestable. "Let's go to the other peaks first." They did not dare to go to the peak that Ling Han was on. "Should we send someone back to report?" Hu Jing asked hesitantly. "Send who?" Huken glared. "Now, no one is willing to leave, right? Furthermore, a return trip would take at least 3 to 4 years' time. Would there still be anything good left? The remaining 6 were all silent. In any case, none of them were willing to leave. The treasure trove of the Heavenly River King was rumored to be related to the celestial realm. Come, let's go to the other peaks. In the end, none of the 7 of them left, and headed towards a peak at the side. Ling Han did not care. He happily collected the godly metal and slowly ascended. As long as these 7 people did not leave this place, he would not be in a hurry. A day later, the 2 of them finally reached the top of the mountain. At this point, the aura exuded by the claw was even more terrifying, causing both Ling Han and Empress Wan Xing's hearts to thump violently. It was as if they could explode at any moment. Do you want to hide for a while? Ling Han asked the queen. I can still hold on for now. I'll tell you when I can't hold on any longer, the queen said gently. Ling Han nodded and looked around. The palace that was bombarded by the giant claw used to be incomparably glorious, but it could still be seen that every brick and tile was not ordinary. Even now, there were still traces of divine radiance circulating around it. However, after being slapped by that claw, the divine essence within it was completely destroyed, and only a few bricks and tiles were still intact. This is green origin jade. Ling Han recognized it and couldn't help being shocked. This was holy material. It was rumored that as long as it reached the size of a fist, there was a chance of developing intelligence, producing a creature. What kind of concept was it to be able to become a saint in the future? Just like the old man of the Stone Emperor. Yet the green origin jade in front of him was the main material used to build palaces. This was not just the size of a palm, but practically a small mountain. Ling Han felt an urge to grumble. Though green origin jade was only level 17, and belonged to the lowest grade of saintly material, using it to build palace walls, what kind of waste was that? No wonder even the tribes that had been exiled from the celestial realm coveted the Heavenly River King, and did not hesitate to gang up on him. This was indeed enough to make one's eyes green with envy. Unfortunately, the majority of the green origin jade was destroyed by this claw, and all their divine essence was obliterated, turning them into trash, which made Ling Han want to beat his chest. They were all his. Whoever this dog's paw belonged to, he would definitely seek revenge in the future. Ling Han picked and chose, and stored the remaining green origin jade into the Black Tower. As he picked, his heart ached. If others saw this, they would definitely find it very strange. Why did you pick saintly material, and look like you were about to fight someone? Chapter 1513. Most of the palace had already been destroyed. Even if many rooms had not been directly struck by the giant claw, they had still suffered severe damage. It could be imagined that when the claw had pressed down, it had set off a terrifying shock wave. Even the palace forged from saintly material could not withstand it, and had been forcibly shaken into ruins. This should have been the move of a saint king. Only a mere shockwave could destroy the lowest level of saintly material. Ling Han and Empress Wan Xing circled around the palace as they collected green origin jade. Whether they were good or bad, they would collect them first, and then slowly choose from them later. He was like a swarm of locusts passing through, leaving nothing behind wherever he went. The Empress pursed her lips and smiled, finding it interesting. They soon finished cleaning up the outermost area, and set out towards the inner area. They saw this giant claw slam into the palace, shattering the ground, and revealing an underground space. Treasure trove, Ling Han and the Empress said at the same time, looking at each other. There was another space under the palace. If it wasn't a treasure trove, what could it be? At first, they should have needed to find a mechanism to open it, but the owner of the giant claw was too powerful, destroying the walls of this treasure trove with a single strike. When one's strength reached the level of a saint king, it was possible that all defenses would be useless. Even a 17th level saint material would be easily shattered. The tip of the giant claw pierced through the ground, but because the claw was too big, even if it pierced a hole, it would be enough for people to enter. However, with the might of a tiger dying, this claw still exuded a powerful aura, and the closer one got, the more suffocating it was. Even the Empress could not resist it, and if she tried to force her way closer, her delicate body would explode. Ling Han was fine. His physique was too strong, far exceeding his cultivation level, and this kind of aura pressure was of the type of regulations, targeting cultivation level and not absolute. Thus, Ling Han was even more relaxed than a saint. He drew the Empress into the Black Tower, and then slowly approached. At this step, even he did not dare to walk too quickly. He could clearly feel that around the giant claw, regulations had become tangible, forming multiple golden sabers that were floating. Attracted by his aura, these golden blades also floated towards him. With a light shake, space was torn apart, and cracks appeared. Ling Han's expression couldn't help but change. This wasn't the simple power of laws, but the undispersed will of a saint ruler. If he were to be cut by it, it was guaranteed that his body would instantly be torn apart. After all, his physique was only slightly weaker than level 15 godly metal, so there was absolutely no way he could resist it. The speed at which the golden saber floated over was very slow, but its power would not decrease because of its slow speed. It still had the destructive power to destroy a little saint or even a medium saint. In the instant that the golden saber approached, Ling Han entered the Black Tower. The golden saber streaked across, and like the slightly moving surface of a lake, the ripples slowly calmed down. When the wind and waves calmed down, Ling Han exited the Black Tower and continued to advance. With every step he took, he would have to enter into the Black Tower. He was clearly only about 100 steps away from the underground treasure trove, and normally he would only need a single leap to reach it, but now he was stunned to have walked for half a day. He finally arrived. Ling Han stared at the giant claw that was just within reach. That metallic skin exuded a sinister and cold aura, as if it was the most ancient god in the universe. It was obviously incredibly ferocious, but also had a kind of divine aura that made one feel reverence. Unfortunately, this thing couldn't be taken away. Otherwise, as long as he could extract a drop of blood essence from it, that would also be a priceless treasure. Ling Han shook his head. If he used his divine sense to surround this giant claw, he would definitely be shattered at the first instant, and his spirit would be injured instead. Even if he did not become an empty shell, his foundation would be injured, and he would not be able to advance in the future. He couldn't help but speculate that this claw was so coincidentally pressing on top of the treasure trove. Could it be that it had long since known that there was something good hidden below? If this chariot had wandered through the universe under the guidance of 3 living Phoenix Kings, then even a fellow Saint King would not have been able to catch up. They would definitely have to know the route of the 3 Phoenix Kings to be able to set up an ambush in advance. Could it be that there was a spy among the ranks of the Heavenly River King? This was also in line with the present situation. Under a sudden attack, a giant claw appeared unguarded and directly destroyed the main palace, reaching straight for the treasure trove. But there was no lack of elites on the Heavenly River King's side, and they immediately counterattacked, cutting off this giant claw. Ling Han imagined this scene, and couldn't help but feel his blood boil. A battle between Saint Kings would definitely be earth-shattering, and could even destroy stars. He carefully descended through the crack in the ground. There was enough width for 3 people to pass through, but the giant claw was right beside him, so he did not dare to make any large movements at all. Otherwise, it would definitely be an action that would be seeking death. After almost half a day, Ling Han finally climbed down, and felt that the clothes on his back were completely drenched. He breathed a long sigh of relief, and only then did he look around. This was indeed a treasure trove, with countless pieces of godly metal and god tools laid out. That mountain path previously was paved with level 16 godly metal. Just think, even level 16 godly metal could only be used as a roadbed, so how precious would it be that could be stored in a treasure trove? Level 17, level 18, level 19, level 20, they were all saintly material. Ling Han immediately broke out in laughter, his grin almost reaching the base of his ears. Rich. He collected them without reservation. Though there were many top-grade god tools here, there was not a single one that was a saint tool, because they did not have the will of martial art that was branded by a saint and could not awaken on their own. But a god tool was a god tool, and as long as it was directly struck, that murderous aura would enter one's body, and its destructive power would similarly be terrifying. Big brother, second brother, and third brother each had one, and the Empress' wife and Feng's wife each had one. His 6 disciples could not favor one over the other, either, and each had one. Added with the fact that he might have to exchange the true dragon's horn with Long Xiangyue's aunt, there had to be one left, right? Sigh, it really was not enough. As Ling Han collected them, he sighed sorrowfully, and also released the Empress to have her fret with him. This kind of fretting, he was sure that countless people would be willing to express it. Could it be that this heavenly river king stole the treasure trove of some great force in the celestial realm? The Empress was also given a fright when she saw it. That was because there was really too much saintly material here. Even if they searched the whole immortal realm, they might not be able to gather so much. Thus, there was only one possibility, and that was that these saintly materials had all come from the celestial realm. Ling Han collected the treasures he saw, but there was still some saintly material that had been damaged by that giant claw, and cracks had appeared on some level 17 and 18 godly metal, causing Ling Han's heart to ache. But when he thought that they would be swallowed by the divine demon sword in future anyway, what did it matter whether they were damaged or not? Aside from saintly material and god tools, there were also saintly medicines here, but they were not alive, and had already been plucked, which made Ling Han very disappointed. If they could be planted in the Black Tower, then his gains would be even greater. In any case, whether he knew them or not, he had all collected them into the Black Tower. However, with just these things, would they be able to attract so many Saint Kings to attack together? The Empress suddenly asked. Ling Han was startled. Indeed, these things could not be said to be unvaluable, but to say that a large group of Saint Kings had attacked together, just for the sake of a piece of saintly material and saintly medicine, this seemed to be making a big fuss over a small matter, right? Chapter 15-14. There is still the last part of the treasure that has not been taken away. Perhaps the variable lies there. Ling Han looked towards the depths of the treasure trove. Logically speaking, the more precious the treasure, the deeper it should be. Empress Luanxing was also filled with anticipation. Though her ancestor came from the celestial realm, aside from benefiting from her bloodline, she actually did not obtain any other benefits. That was because she was also very curious about what the treasures of the celestial realm looked like. The two of them continued to take away the things around the treasure trove. Very soon, this treasure trove was completely taken away, and in front of them, there was only a table left, with a jade box on it. It wouldn't be another world in a box, right? Ling Han and the Empress looked at each other. Until now, they had not discovered anything above saint level. Admittedly, this treasure trove was considerably precious, but if a force of the celestial realm moved as a whole, their wealth should also reach this level. Ling Han had previously seen Ding Zixian's memories, and had some understanding of the Ding clan's wealth, and the Ding clan was a severing mundane tier force, and this kind of ancestor could actually be counted in the tens. Obviously, this could not possibly be a top clan of the celestial realm. The wealth of the Ding clan would not be inferior to this, so if a forbidden land would besiege the Heavenly River King because of this, Ling Han did not really believe it. Perhaps there was an astonishing precious treasure hidden in the jade box. Be careful, the Empress warned, her right hand gripping the brick tightly. If the situation was not right, she would smack it out. Ling Han nodded, and placed both hands on the jade box, slowly opening it. The jade box was not heavy at all, and was easily opened. A flash of golden light spread out. It did not have any destructive power, but was filled with a vast aura, as if an ancient god was about to awaken. As more and more boxes were opened, the golden light covered the entire underground treasure trove, and even surged out of the palace, filling the skies. But it was only for an instant. The golden light faded, and there were actually only 2 bundles of paper rolled up in the box. This could also be considered a treasure? Even if these 2 pieces of paper were the decrees of a Saint King, they could only be used a limited number of times in time, and were even more not worth the Forbidden Land making a move. Strange. Ling Han was startled. He discovered a bloodstain on a piece of paper. It was only a tiny bit, but it gave him the feeling of suppressing the heavens. It was indescribably heavy. This definitely belonged to a supreme elite. Thankfully, there was no killing intent in this drop of blood. Otherwise, a single drop of blood from a saint would be able to kill an eternal river tier elite. Ling Han wanted to pick up the bundle of paper, but found that it was strangely heavy. No matter how hard he tried, it was useless. The bundle of paper didn't budge at all, and it didn't even bend a little. "I can't deal with you," Ling Han humphed. Since there was no killing intent in the blood, he directly wrapped his divine sense around the jade box, and then with a thought, the jade box was sucked into the Black Tower. Once he entered the Black Tower, so what if he was a Saint King? He would still be killed. Speaking of which, Ling Han's greatest trump card was actually the Black Tower. Even the indestructible Heaven Scroll had been inherited from the Black Tower. Unfortunately, he still couldn't use the Black Tower as he pleased. Otherwise, he should be invincible in the immortal realm, and he could draw anyone he disliked into the Black Tower and do whatever he wanted with them. "Wife, let's enter the Black Tower." Ling Han and Empress Luan entered the Black Tower and continued to study that jade box. This time, Ling Han was carefree and casually opened the jade box. What was there to be afraid of? He stretched out his hand again, and the bundle of blood-stained paper was easily picked up. It was as light as a piece of paper. It was a piece of paper in the first place, and only became extraordinary because it was stained with a drop of blood. Is it the blood of a Saint King? Ling Han raised his head to ask, but it wasn't Empress Luan Xing he was asking. Small Tower silently appeared, swayed lightly, and said, "That's right." It could have been left behind by the Heavenly River King, Ling Han speculated. Empress Luan Xing only smiled and didn't rush him. In front of Ling Han, her patience was astonishingly good. To her, Ling Han was the most precious treasure in the world. She had this person, and that was equivalent to having the whole world. Ling Han slowly unrolled the paper. It was rolled up like a decree, suppressed by a drop of blood, and could last for eternity. Otherwise, the power of time could destroy everything. A letter. Ling Han swept a glance over it. This wasn't a decree, and to be precise, it wasn't a letter either, but a will. He and the Empress stood side by side, and stood up. After a long while, they put down their wills. They both had a good understanding of what had happened all those years ago, and this will was indeed the most precious treasure in this place. It wasn't the will itself, but the message left behind. The story had to be told from the beginning. The Heavenly River King wasn't a member of the Forbidden Land, but he was a prodigy of the ancient times. After awakening his bloodline, his path of martial art was very smooth, and he also learned of the existence of the celestial realm from the teachings passed down from generation to generation. But after so many years, actually many ancient tribes didn't believe the existence of the celestial realm, and thought that this was only the wild talk of some ancestor. At first, the Heavenly River King didn't believe it either, but as his bloodline became stronger and stronger, he gradually believed it, and also stepped onto the path of searching for the slightest clue of the celestial realm. But in the end, the celestial realm was completely clueless, yet he found the abode of a celestial king's body. He only knew that a great turmoil had occurred at the time, and this celestial king charged out of the celestial realm alone, ultimately dying, and the treasures he had on him were all obtained by the Heavenly River King, the majority of which were saintly material that Ling Han had obtained. This also matched what Small Tower had said. Above level 20 godly metal was divine metal, and there was no transition. Otherwise, how could a celestial king not have level 21 godly metal, or level 5 divine metal? No, above top-grade saintly material was divine metal, reaching the heavens in a single step. But even a celestial king did not have divine metal, which meant that even in the celestial realm, divine metal had to be an incredibly precious thing. Ling Han involuntarily tightened his grip on the divine demon sword. Before his strength reached great accomplishment, it was not a good thing to reveal the divine demon sword in the celestial realm. If he was recognized, perhaps even a celestial king would hunt him down. In the celestial realm, there should be a considerable number of elites that could see through the Black Tower, and this was no longer absolute protection. Back to the main topic. The Heavenly River King obtained the treasures left behind by a celestial king. Though there was not much, this was the immortal realm, and it was enough for the Heavenly River King to suddenly rise up and soar into the skies. But this was not the greatest opportunity. Among the treasures left behind by the Celestial King, there was still an address, and it was the location of the ancestral grounds of this Celestial King. Even in the Celestial Realm, no one knew of it. Even if they knew, they still needed a special method to open it, and this method was also in the hands of the Heavenly River King. The Heavenly River King had long desired to charge into the Celestial Realm. At the same time, he had also gathered some like-minded people, such as the 12 generals. They were all ancient tribes, or else it would not have been possible that all of them had advanced into the Great Saint Tier. But just when the Heavenly River King was most complacent, he was surrounded and attacked by a great many forbidden lands, and the root of the trouble lay with his most trusted assistant, the Open Clouds King. He was like a brother to him, yet he informed and contacted the various forbidden lands, and set up ambushes on the path that the chariot pulled by the 3 phoenixes would definitely pass through. More refreshing reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 15:16. The old witch Ling Han spoke of was the old woman beside Hunyeo. Because Hunyeo called her an old witch, Ling Han followed suit. Thinking of Hunyeo, Ling Han naturally thought of Helian Sun Shui, his parents, his son, and the others who had been taken away by the little vinegar jar. He couldn't help but miss them even more. More than 100 years had passed. How was everyone? My son might even be a father himself. But who knows, maybe his son's energy is all on martial art, and he doesn't have time to chase after girls. At this time, Ling Han was in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted his son to get married early so that he could have his own sex and happiness, but on the other hand, he didn't want his son to get married so that he could personally attend his son's wedding. Sigh, what's the point of thinking so much? Just do what you have to do. Ling Han stopped thinking about it after thinking for a while. In any case, he was still in the immortal realm and couldn't go to the celestial realm for the time being. There was no point in thinking about it. Let's go. Empress Luan Xing said to Ling Han. It was time for them to go to the other peaks and think of a way to set a trap for Gu Daoyi. Ling Han nodded and said, unfortunately, the Heavenly River King still did not have time to pass down the cultivation technique of a celestial king. Otherwise, we would have really struck gold on this trip. He didn't know what kind of king tier a celestial king was in the celestial realm, but it was definitely higher than a severing mundane tier. Moreover, in the celestial realm, how could he possibly be an ordinary elite? Thus, the cultivation method of a celestial king was incomparably precious. Empress Luan Xing walked a few steps and suddenly said in a low voice, previously, you chanted a few celestial characters, which triggered a reaction from my bloodline. It seems like it also awakened some of my memories. The ancestor of my 9 snakes lineage is an immortal king. What the Heavenly River King had obtained was the inheritance of a celestial king, so it was not difficult to understand that he knew celestial text. Moreover, it was not ordinary celestial text, but rather celestial king tier level celestial text. Moreover, this had triggered a reaction from Empress Luan Xing's bloodline, which indirectly meant that the Empress ancestor was a celestial king. What she cultivates is the 9 deaths heaven art. Ordinarily, those that are named heaven art are all celestial king tier techniques, Small Tower suddenly said. Ling Han was surprised. He didn't expect this guy to suddenly interrupt. You don't know how strong the experts in the immortal realms are, yet you can actually recognize the 9 deaths heaven art? A living person is right in front of me. How could I not come out? Do you think I'm as stupid as a pig as you? Small Tower said coldly. You are not allowed to insult my husband. The Empress was also annoyed and rebuked Small Tower. Small Tower did not care at all. It was only a tool spirit, so how could it care about a person's beauty or ugliness? The Empress charm was completely ineffective on it. Ling Han knew that Small Tower had a venomous tongue, but did not care. Otherwise, he would have long since been angered to death by this guy. He said, going by that logic, what I cultivate is the indestructible heaven scroll, and that is also a celestial king tier technique. Tise, who told you that the heaven scroll is the same as a heaven art? Small Tower was even more disdainful. The indestructible heaven scroll is a supreme cultivation technique that the heavenly venerable Tyr created by gathering the techniques of a few celestial kings and fusing his own comprehension. You should just be secretly happy. Fusing with the technique of a celestial king, he would reach a higher level of enlightenment. Ling Han was amused and said, "Then wouldn't I be even more awesome than a celestial king in the future?" A technique is only a technique, and whether one can cultivate it to the highest level is also different from person to person, Small Tower said. These words were very reasonable, but its next words revealed its true colors. With me around, it would be very difficult for you to reach the celestial king tier. Pay. Ling Han stuck up his middle finger. Just because of these words of yours, I will not only become a celestial king, I will also surpass celestial kings. I will wait, Small Tower said calmly, and then slowly disappeared. A strange expression appeared on the Empress' face. Why do I feel that it is trying to goad me into action? Even if it is goading me into action, I will surpass Celestial King Tyr. That guy is too despicable. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I will throw it into the toilet. Ling Han said in displeasure. Of course, this was definitely just empty words. If he really threw the Black Tower into the toilet, would he still need it in the future? The Empress only smiled gently and held Ling Han's arm. The two of them exited the Black Tower together. It was still the underground treasure trove, and that massive claw was still stuck in it, exuding a cold light. The two of them carefully left. The Empress was slightly strained, but with the brick in hand, she still managed to endure it. They looked down from the top of the mountain. There were a total of 14 mountain peaks here, and there was a palace on each mountain peak. Going by this deduction, the remaining 13 palaces should be the residences of the Open Cloud's king and the 12 generals respectively. Let's go, let's sweep through them. Ling Han was filled with confidence. He now had a saint's decree, as well as a drop of Saint King blood essence, so he was full of confidence. There was naturally no need to use the Saint King blood essence to deal with a few eternal river tears. That thing was also a consumable, and definitely had to be used to deal with the stronger ones. Thus, he would at most take out that saint's decree. In any case, its might had pretty much dropped, and he himself was not very far from this kind of battle prowess, so it would not be a waste to use it. They ascended a mountain peak. The steps here were also paved with godly metal, but they were not 16 steps, but 15 steps. This should be the Open Cloud's King's mountain peak, which was slightly weaker than the main peak. Clicked. Ling Han did not hold back, and pried all the way up to the top of the mountain. In the meantime, Hu Kan and the others had also arrived. They had left the main peak, but actually did not run over to fight. That's right, they are not in a hurry to make a move, and are deliberately letting us gather treasures. In future, when they capture us, these treasures will naturally belong to them, and they will also be able to save some of their strength and energy. Ling Han very quickly guessed. He and the Empress exchanged a smile, and both broke into a smile. It was not certain who would be robbing who. Then we are not in a hurry to make a move either. Ling Han realized that Hu Kan and the others were also digging for steps, and they still called him a country bumpkin. TSK. They dug all the way to the top of the mountain. This was another palace, but there were not many treasures. Ling Han only found some brocade. This was good stuff. It was woven from silk as high as level 17 and godly metal. Not only was it incredibly tough, it also had a very good effect of dispelling force. Toughness and dispelling force were different. If it was just toughness, such as clothing, then when a sword pierced over, it would indeed not be able to pierce through, but the power could still be transmitted, and could similarly cause damage. But adding dispelling force would be different. It was equivalent to channeling origin power to cancel out the attack, and the damage received would be further reduced. If formations and martial art intent could be added, then it could be made into a treasured garment. Actually, these brocades were just curtains on the bed. The Open Cloud's king was completely disdainful of using these saintly materials to make protective gear. Wife, we can make many of these, right? Hee, we've struck it rich. Ling Han laughed loudly. The Empress thought for a moment, and said, actually, we can't make many of them. Making treasured garments consumes a lot of materials. Let's make as many as we can. Ling Han also knew that he had already made a huge profit. Unfortunately, this palace was not built with saintly material, but with level 16 materials. The problem was this was too tough. Ling Han could not dismantle it at all. At this time, he actually should thank that claw. If it had not pierced through the main palace hall, Ling Han would not have been able to collect the green origin jade, what more discover the underground treasure trove. They moved to another peak, and this step was even more inferior. It was paved with level 14 godly metal. Obviously, this was the peak of one of the 12 generals, and the remaining 11 peaks should also be of this standard. The people on both sides were sweeping through. In the end, Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing swept through 5 peaks, while Hu Kan and the others swept through 9. After all, they had the advantage in numbers, and aside from the main peak, the other peaks did not have any terrifying mountain winds. Finally, the two sides met at the foot of the 6th peak. Chapter 15-17. Hu Kan and the others had already recovered their calm and composure. There was no mountain wind here to suppress them, so they could use their full power. Then, wouldn't it be easy to suppress Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing? They were just turtles in a jar. Fairy, why follow such trash? Join our 8 stones forbidden land, Hu Kan said to Empress Luan Xing. Generally speaking, it was extremely difficult to enter a certain forbidden area. This was because in order to maintain the purity of the 8 stones bloodline, they basically chose their partners within the family. As long as they weren't biological siblings, it didn't matter if they were cousins or cousins. But Empress Luan Xing was so astonishingly beautiful, so he naturally had to do his best to win her over. At worst, they could just not have children. Saying these words in front of Ling Han was actually a deliberate attack on Ling Han, who asked them to suffer so many losses previously. If they did not attack this person, they would not be able to vent their anger. Empress Luan Xing did not even look at Hu Kan. Wasn't this a fool's dream? She could not be bothered to pay attention to him. Ugly people often cause trouble. This was Empress' style of disdain, causing Hu Kan and the other 3 men to feel displeased. I'll beat him to death. Hu Bing was the first to jump out. He had always been unconvinced, and thought that it was only because of the mountain wind that he was inferior to Ling Han. Yet Hu Kan stretched out a hand, stopping him, and shook his head. Hu Bing definitely could not be this brat's match. It was very simple. He could not defeat Ling Han even after using half of his power. Did Hu Bing have half of his power? What a joke, not even 1/10,000th. They had already lost 3 rounds in a row, so how could they still seek humiliation? Brother Can? Hu Bing was unconvinced. He was a prodigy that had walked out of a forbidden land. Which person of the same cultivation level in the immortal realm could fight him? Hu Kan glared, and Hu Bing instantly did not dare to speak. How should I address you? Hu Kan asked. Ling Han smiled and said, You want to kill me, then I won't be polite, and will just kill you. So, you will soon become a pile of dead people, so what use is there in knowing my name? How arrogant! Hu Kan smirked coldly. 7 against 2, and they had the advantage in numbers. Furthermore, Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing were only in the low extreme, and the difference in cultivation level was like heaven and earth. Where did his confidence come from? Whether I'm arrogant or not, we'll know once we fight. Ling Han clenched his fists. Hu Shan charged out and channeled the 8 stones technique. His body transformed into an ancient giant rock that was impervious to all weapons and techniques. He had reached the 2nd level of the 8 stones technique, and he should be invincible in the eternal river tier. Only those at the pinnacle level could injure him. If it hadn't been for the fact that the mountain winds had contained the power of regulations of a Genesis tier, how could he have possibly suffered a loss? Ling Han drew out the broken wooden sword. Before the quality of the divine demon sword had improved, the broken wooden sword was still more useful. Otherwise, if the divine demon sword encountered an elite in the consummate level of the eternal river tier, it would definitely shatter with a single blow. Before entering into the celestial realm, the might of the broken wooden sword was actually not inferior to the divine demon sword. Multiple demonic patterns bloomed, and a frightening killing intent flowed from it. Sacred artifact. Hu Ken was shocked, but then he shook his head. Demonic artifact. His eyes turned red because even he didn't have a corresponding sacred tool. Even though the Forbidden Lands had astonishing foundations, because they had developed too much, they also had many families to support them. As for the Stone Emperor, his father only had him as his sole heir, so whatever good things there were would definitely be left for him. Thus, the Stone Emperor could travel on a saint-level chariot, and he also had armor that was not inferior to saintly material. But what about the Forbidden Lands? 7 prodigies that were not inferior to the Stone Emperor had so easily walked out, and did the Forbidden Lands really have that many saint tools? They had not obtained the inheritance of a celestial king, so they definitely had saint tools. Perhaps there were even a few, but it was definitely not to the extent that the juniors could all have one. Hu Ken was naturally jealous, and there was also a strong wariness. That was a saint tool, and it would not be fun to be scratched by it. Furthermore, Ling Han was not in the ordinary low extreme. His battle prowess could even reach half of his, and added with a demonic tool, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. His expression was very grave, and he pulled away to exchange blows with Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his sword to parry the attack. His power was too much inferior to Hu Ken's. Even if the 10 formations merged into one, he was still far from being a match for him. Thankfully, he had the tide of the ages that could disperse the majority of the attack, and added with his astonishing physique, the damage that Hu Ken could cause him was very limited. Even if he was wounded with his recovery ability, he would recover instantly, and it would not hurt or itch. Hu Ken finally no longer cared about his pride, and declared, "Attack together, and kill this person." The latter knew the secret of the Heavenly River King's inheritance, so he had to be killed. Hu Bing and the other 2 immediately leaped out, and unhesitatingly began a joint attack, but Hu Shuyu and the other 2 women targeted Empress Luan Xing, and very tacitly surrounded her together. To Hu Kan and the others, the Empress was a supreme treasure, but to Hu Shuyu and the other 2 women, the Empress was a super thorn in their side that had to be removed. Otherwise, they would go mad with jealousy. The moment they thought that there was actually such a perfect woman in this world, it would be heart-wrenching. The Empress was unafraid, and drew out her brick. In the battle between the 2 sides, whether it was Ling Han or Empress Luan Xing, they were both at a disadvantage. The difference in cultivation level and numbers was too great. The reason they could survive was because one had a strong physique, and the other had the help of absolute beginning stones. Otherwise, if it had been anyone else, they would have long since died several hundred times over. But continuing like this was not a solution. Ling Han was fine, but the Empress could only rely on absolute beginning stones, after all. If her origin power was exhausted, she would be in danger. A ferocious glint flashed in Ling Han's eyes, and he said, "You guys insist on seeking death, so you can't blame others." He endured a few heavy blows, and rushed to Empress Luan Xing's side, drawing her into the Black Tower. Then he took out the Saint's decree, and directly opened it without thinking. Suddenly, a frightening might overflowed, and endless golden light surged. "Not good, the Saint's decree." Hu Kan's expression immediately changed drastically. "And its power seems to be very weak." Hu Shuyu suddenly realized that something was wrong. "This is the Saint's decree, but too much time has passed, so its power is already gone. This must have been obtained in the main palace hall. Join forces, and it will be fine as long as we endure for a while. The Saint's decree has already lost the majority of its power." All right. The 7 of them joined forces. At this moment, the decree was already exploding with a frightening killing intent, blasting towards them. There was no need for Ling Han to control it at all. The decree would attack all targets aside from the wielder. This was also the weakness of a decree. It was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. If one wanted to control the might of the decree, they would need to spend more effort and time to refine it. At that time, the Heavenly River King clearly could not have done it. Not good, though the power in this decree is not weak. Why is the power of regulation so terrifying? Hu Jing exclaimed in shock. It had only been a few strikes, and she was already riddled with wounds, and the situation was precarious. Are we really going to die here? I don't want to die. The 7 of them all exclaimed in shock, and were even more regretful. If they had known that this trip would be so dangerous, they would have asked their seniors to bestow them a decree no matter what. Even if it was not written by a saint king, it would be enough as long as it had reached the saint level. But if they really had a saint's decree, Ling Han could at most sacrifice that drop of blood essence. Who would be afraid of who? Chapter 15:18. With the might of the saint's decree, Hu Can and the others were all covered in injuries, completely powerless to resist. When they finally endured until the power of the decree passed, all of them were severely injured. Although none of them died, their vitality was greatly damaged, and their strength fell to rock bottom. Ling Han brandished his sword and mercilessly charged over. Not only did they want to kill him, but they also set their sights on the Empress's wife. He naturally could not tolerate this. Kill him. Kill him. Fuck, do you think you guys are the only ones who can show off your power? Do you think I have no temper? As the sword slashed across, blood splattered everywhere. After drinking human blood, the broken wooden sword became even more malevolent. Black demon chi surged out from the sword and surged around Ling Han's body, making him seem as if he had transformed into a great demon of the netherworld. Puff Hu Bing's strength was the weakest, and he was also the first to be defeated. With a slash of the sword, blood spurted into the sky. His head also fell to the ground, his face still carrying a look of disbelief. He was the prodigy of the Forbidden Lands. With such a big tree behind him, there was actually someone who dared to kill him. Having his head chopped off by the broken wooden sword naturally meant instant death. You dare! The eyes of Hu Can and the other 5 all reddened. Previously, no matter how much they had fallen into a disadvantageous position, they still had pride in their bones. They came from the forbidden grounds. Everyone in the minor divine realms felt that they belonged to the immortal realms. How could the trash of this world compare to them? However, Hu Bing's death caused their hearts to tremble violently. Their pride immediately vanished into thin air. They were afraid. If this malefic star really dared to make a move, even the Forbidden Land wouldn't be able to scare him. We are from the 8 Stones Forbidden Land. There are a total of 3 patriarchs, and all of them are saint kings. There are hundreds of saints, and if you dare to attack us, you are destined to die a horrible death. Hu Can and the others all brought up the 8 Stones Forbidden Land. Right now, this was the only hope that could save them. Ling Han pretended not to hear. Since he already had the intention to kill, it was impossible for him to stop. No one could scare him. Kill, 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 kill. Heads flew up one by one as people fell one by one. Very soon, only Hu Can and Hu Shuyu were left. Go! Hu Can called out to Hu Shuyu. Hu Shuyu nodded. Previously, they had fought to the death because they were burdened by Hu Bing and the others. How could they abandon them and escape alone? However, it was different now. Everyone else was dead, and there was no point in fighting to the death. Furthermore, if they all died here, wouldn't they have died for nothing? How could they take revenge? After all, the patriarch had shielded himself from heaven's will for at least a year. Therefore, even if the patriarch had a sudden impulse to perform another divination, it would be a year later. Where to find the killer? The old ancestor was only a sage king, not an omnipotent immortal king. The 2 of them immediately split up. As long as one of them managed to escape, they would be able to enter the starship outside. With the starship's defenses, Ling Han would naturally not be able to destroy it. Ling Han gave chase. Now that the 2 of them were heavily injured, their battle prowess had plummeted. If he did not take this chance to kill them, then when they had recovered from their injuries, he would need to use the Saint King's blood essence to kill them. That would be too much of a waste. Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. Ling Han used this divine technique. Xiao, his origin power turned into a stream of light and chased after Hu Shuyu. This archery technique combined the tide of the ages and the blood crow formation. As the stream of light shot out, it turned into a crimson divine crow. With a flap of its wings, its speed increased once again. What? As Huken was not the target of the attack, he had the spare energy to turn his head to take a look. He could not help but reveal an expression of shock. Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, you are a remnant of the Heavenly River. The Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow was the ultimate technique of one of the 12 generals. Back then, it had killed a considerable number of great saints, and even posed a considerable threat to Saint Kings. Thus, even though Huken had not seen it with his own eyes, he had occasionally heard about it from his seniors, and had a deep memory of it. Thus, he recognized it with a single glance. However, he was unable to understand why the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow would turn into a blood crow in the end. But this did not hinder the might of this attack. In fact, it had far surpassed his understanding. Pooh, the blood crow caught up to Hushuyu with a flap of its wings, and pierced through her heart. A spray of fresh blood sprayed out, and she collapsed to the ground with a loud crash. Logically speaking, immortals were extremely difficult to kill. Even if their physical bodies were completely destroyed, as long as their spirit was not destroyed, they could still find a new body and come back to life. However, this attack of Ling Han's had even been infused with the Nine Heavens flame. Once the immortal flames entered his body, he still could not be killed. Huken's entire body was covered in cold sweat, and he hurriedly turned and fled. Now, he had already lost all will to fight, and only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, invite the great elites of the Forbidden Lands to come out, and chase after Ling Han everywhere. Not a single one of you can escape. Ling Han shot out another arrow. This time, he used the ultimate arrow. Pooh, a stream of light streaked past, and Huken's figure was instantly sent flying. He drew an arc in the air, and crashed heavily onto the ground. Blood flowed out from under his body, and his eyes were still wide open, filled with fury and indignation. A great supreme prodigy actually died in such a cowardly manner. How could he close his eyes? Yet Ling Han shook his head. Huken should not be a match for big shots like Renfeiyun. He had seen the battle of the 3 big shots, and they were at least much stronger than Huken. He searched out the spatial spirit tools on the 7 people, and transferred all the things inside into the Black Tower, and obtained a large amount of high-level godly metal. This trip was really worth it. As long as the Divine Demon Sword can be improved to level 14, then it can charge up to level 17 in one go, and become a saint tool. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. At the time, he really did not care about this treasure trove at all. He only wanted to dig a trap for Gu Dawi. And I cannot forget the proper business. Ling Han immediately began to plan how to make the news of the Heavenly River King's treasure trove appear very normal. Gu Dawi was no fool. Being able to become a severing mundane ancestor, he definitely had great foresight. What Ling Han gambled on was that now that he had reincarnated, he did not have that steadiness that he had in the past. Furthermore, he definitely desperately wanted to return to the celestial realm. Otherwise, he could very well bury himself in cultivation alone, and what was the point of entering the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy? Let's go out. I wonder how Fenger is. The two of them exited the chest, and saw that there was a deathly stillness in the galaxy. The corpses of the 3 Phoenix Kings were no longer glowing, but they were still tightly hugging each other, not the slightest bit of light passing through. This situation will not end in a short while. Ling Han recalled that the Rain Emperor had obtained the inheritance of an Eternal River Tier elite, and had spent at least 20 years to digest the benefits. That was only the Eternal River Tier, and now he was a Saint King. Fine, with these 3 Phoenix Kings here, it will be more convincing. Furthermore, as long as a Saint King does not appear, no one can possibly harm Fenger. After pondering for a moment, Ling Han tied this chariot to the cloud-piercing shuttle, and dragged the corpses of the 3 Phoenix Kings towards Wood Figure Planet. Of course, it had to be closer. Otherwise, how long would it take for Gu Dawi to rush over? He did not have a cloud-piercing shuttle, either. The cloud-piercing shuttle returned according to the original route. It was only a dozen or so days and very quickly passed. Ling Han pulled the chariot onto a barren planet, and then blasted out a massive crater, making it look as if this chariot had just been unearthed from this place. As for the various details, he did not care. The corpses of the 3 Phoenix Kings were not enough to explain everything. He quietly returned to the academy and began to boil soup with saintly medicine. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 1520. There was a clue left on that chest. There was a Celestial King ancient technique hidden inside, and this was leaked by Ling Han. It was a complete lie, intended to attract Gu Daoyi. You came from the Celestial Realm, and naturally knew how awesome Celestial King cultivation techniques were. See, the 9 Deaths Heaven art you cultivated was a Celestial King technique, and now there was another one in front of you. Do you want it? More importantly, whether it was Gu Daoyi or Empress Luanxing, the 9 Deaths Heaven art they obtained was not complete, but an incomplete heaven art was treated as a precious treasure by Gu Daoyi, a severing mundane ancestor of the Celestial Realm. So how extraordinary would a complete heaven art be? Even if Gu Daoyi knew there was something fishy about it, he would definitely go and investigate. In front of a precious treasure, it was hard not to be tempted. Not bad, not bad. Though the whole treasure trove incident could not stand scrutiny, it was fine as long as the treasure trove was real, and Gu Daoyi went. Ling Han was very confident. Even if Gu Daoyi had been bestowed many treasures by the Star Sand Saint, he only had to sacrifice the blood essence of a Saint King, and he could definitely kill him, unless the Star Sand Saint personally came. To kill Gu Daoyi, he had to waste that drop of Saint King blood essence. Was it a loss? Of course not, that was to push down his wife. No, it was for his wife. For his wife, what was a drop of Saint King blood essence worth? It was about time for him to set off. What if Gu Daoyi was already on his way and missed him? Isn't that little Han ahead? A voice rang out. Xiao, a strong gust of wind had already arrived. Ling Han suddenly lashed out with a kick. Damn dog, you're still using this trick? The large black dog turned and dodged Ling Han's kick. I greeted you warmly, and you actually attacked me. I've never seen someone like you. Ling Han scoffed. If he hadn't kicked out, he would definitely have been ruthlessly bitten by the large black dog, and this damn dog actually had the face to bite back. As expected, he was extremely shameless. Little Black, who have you harmed recently? Hey, I'll only harm you, the large black dog said as he glared at Ling Han. No matter who he faced, he would always be successful. However, he had never been able to gain the upper hand against Ling Han. This made him feel slightly gloomy, and he was also extremely indignant. I can't be bothered with you, I have something to do. Ling Han walked out of the martial courtyard. Killing or arson? If there's something good, don't forget about Grandpa Dog. The large black dog said excitedly. Ling Han glanced at it. Sure enough, this damn dog only wished for the world to be in chaos. They swaggered out. Although many students had arrived, no one came out to stop them. There was no need to mention Ling Han. His strength was forged through battle, and even his senior brother, who was in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, had suffered a crushing defeat. If the consummate level of the Eternal River tier didn't appear, who would be a match for him? In fact, everyone suspected that if the big shots didn't appear, even ordinary consummate level elites wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Meanwhile, the large black dog had earned his reputation by being a despicable person. He would never face anyone head-on. If someone offended him, for example, by scolding him, he would come knocking on their door in the middle of the night and cause all kinds of disturbances. He would even do things like throwing feces at them. How sinister was he? Furthermore, he was extremely slippery, and no one could catch up to him. Thus, everyone would rather fight with Ling Han. At worst, they would just be beaten up. However, if they fought with the large black dog, that would be a serious mental blow. There was a senior brother who was a good example. He had once publicly declared that he would stew the large black dog and eat his dog meat. In the end, he was harassed by the large black dog to the point that he directly left the academy. A fierce and despicable person walked side by side, so who would dare to seek trouble with them? When they arrived outside, Ling Han drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle. The large black dog forced his way onto it, and with a clang, his iron underwear collided with a chair, sending sparks flying. Fuck, if you break it, you'll have to compensate me to death, Ling Han said with a glare. Stingy. The large black dog acted as if he hadn't heard anything, and even shifted his bottom to sit more comfortably. Ling Han looked at him with a strange gaze. "Brat, what kind of gaze is that? It's very dangerous." The large black dog felt like his hair was standing on end. Ling Han snickered and said, "It won't be long. I'll introduce you to someone." The large black dog was strange. If he wanted to know someone, then so be it. Grandpa Dog had never been afraid of anyone in his life. Ling Han didn't say anything else, and steered the cloud-piercing shuttle into the skies. When the large black dog met Hunyo in the future, he would understand what it meant by there would always be a higher mountain. When a despicable dog met a glutton, he would only end up as a dead dog. Sigh, he really missed that little girl a little. The cloud-piercing shuttle rose into the skies. Shio, it pierced through the air, and in a short while, it arrived on the planet where the 3 Phoenix King corpses were. At this time, there were already many people gathered around the war chariot. Even if they didn't use a high-grade item like the cloud-piercing shuttle, it would only take 3 to 4 days of travel from Wood-Figure Planet to here. Everyone was lining up to try to open the chest on the war chariot, but even Ling Han had to risk his life to open it. Then, even if a big shot like Ren Feiyun came, he might not succeed. It wasn't a problem of strength, but rather that the chest was too heavy. Whose physique could support forcefully opening it? It would only cause their fingers to break one by one. If one person couldn't do it, then 2 people. If 2 couldn't do it, then 3 people. But no matter how many people there were, the chest was only so big, so how many people could reach out at the same time? But the more they couldn't open it, the more eager everyone was, and deeply believed that there was a supreme treasure hidden inside. Ling Han knew that Gu Daoyi was a divine fetus. Though his physique wasn't as strong as his, he could share the power he ate with his whole body. Thus, Gu Daoyi definitely could open the chest. "Come quickly." Ling Han sat cross-legged. He had always been very patient. Yet the large black dog couldn't sit still, and walked around on his 2 legs. His iron underwear reflected light, which was very dazzling. But he was not ashamed at all, and appeared and disappeared mysteriously, placing his hands on people's shoulders everywhere. Whoever was placed on would definitely be scared out of their wits. This was the despicable king of the 8th campus, and whoever was targeted would be unlucky. Meanwhile, the large black dog snickered. He was deliberately scaring people. 2 days later, the Empress sent a message from the Black Tower. She had already finished refining the medicinal effects of the saintly medicine, and her present cultivation level had already reached the late stage of the low extreme. Her improvement was faster than Ling Han's, and that was because she had refined an extra piece of saintly origin. Yet Ling Han felt that the Empress's improvement was too slow, and it would be best if she immediately advanced into the saint tier. He didn't let the Empress and the others appear. This time, he was trapping and killing Gu Daoyi, so the fewer people that appeared, the better, lest they left behind any flaws. If they were really exposed, he would ride the cloud-piercing shuttle and flee. In any case, he was mainly in the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy for martial art resources, and he didn't lack cultivation techniques. Of course, Ling Han still had a very good impression of the Tranquil Heart Saint. After all, he owed him with guidance. Time passed day after day, and the chariot and treasure chest attracted more and more people's attention. Elites gathered, and even big shots like Ren Feiyun and Qi Tian arrived. Not only the 8th courtyard, but the other courtyards also heard the news and rushed over. Right now, no one cared about where the information came from. The treasure chest was right in front of them. What they cared about now was how to obtain the items inside. Ling Han, Qi Tian and Kai Miao stared at him at the same time. They had never forgotten about him. No matter how much glory Ling Han had won for the 8th Academy, tradition could not be abandoned. Ling Han laughed and said, "You want to fight?" Chapter 1521. Enough, this is not the 8th Academy. Ren Feiyun stood between the 2 parties. "Don't let people laugh at you." Only then did Qi Tian and Kai Miao let out a snort, no longer pressing him. Tradition could not be abandoned, but the reputation of the 8th Academy was equally important. If there was an internal conflict in public, even they would lose face. Giants like Ren Feiyun and Qi Tian also tried to open the box, but it was to no avail. It was not that they were not strong enough, but that their physiques were lacking. For example, Second in the World thought that his physique was amazing and insisted on holding on, but he used too much force and burst his pants, causing everyone to laugh. His physique was good enough, but his strength was a little lacking, so he could not compete in the end. It was also because he was close to success that he opened the box a crack, and there was a sacred golden light spreading out, which made him hold on and risk his life. As a result, after transforming into a barbaric bear, he directly broke his pants. No one laughed at Second in the World. He had already done what even giants could not do, and it also made everyone hope that this box could indeed be opened. Moreover, the light was so sacred and great that no one would believe that there was no supreme secret treasure hidden in it. As long as one's physique is similar to Second in the World, and a little more strength, one can definitely open this box. But does such a person exist? Everyone shook their heads. There were many people with high cultivation, but there should be no one whose physique could reach Second in the World's level. Ling Han. A freshman suddenly shouted. That's right, Ling Han. Another new student called out. The seniors might not know, but the freshmen all saw with their own eyes that when Ling Han and Second in the World fought fiercely, they collided hundreds and thousands of times. In the end, Second in the World had no choice but to admit defeat. It could be seen that Ling Han's physique was stronger than Second in the World. However, senior brother Ling's cultivation is similar to Second in the World. If Second in the World can't open the box, senior brother Ling probably can't do it either. Senior brother Ling defeated Second in the World. Maybe he can do it. Yes, how do you know if you haven't tried? Everyone looked for a while, and soon their eyes focused on Ling Han. Junior brother Ling, come and give it a try. A senior student waved at him. How could Ling Han be willing? If he opened the chest and let others know beforehand that it was empty inside, would Gu Daoyi still come? What number 1 freshman? He doesn't even have the courage to try. Someone sneered. It was unknown whether they were intentionally belittling Ling Han or provoking him. These words were not pleasant to hear. Ling Han glared at the man and said, "No one will care if you're being cheap, but if you bite people like a mad dog, you're asking for a beating." That person was not from Astral 8. Although he was a senior student, he should not have any grudges with Ling Han. However, Ling Han was not pleasing to the eye. He sneered and said, "Junior brother, you've been very popular recently." His name was Bien Du, and he had been accepted into the martial courtyard 1,000,000 years ago. When he had entered, he had been ranked 39th, but after 1,000,000 years, the original ranking of the top 100 had changed a lot. Some had died while exploring ancient ruins, while others had regressed. However, he was one of those who had improved. His ranking had soared from 39th to 8th place. Thus, he was also very proud of himself. Now, even the big shots had not been able to open the chest, but there were actually many people who liked Ling Han, which made him slightly jealous. Furthermore, Ling Han had actually avoided a show of strength and did not crawl through the dog's hole, which made him very jealous. With the two added together, the scene of him deliberately mocking Ling Han appeared. Ling Han stood up. In any case, Gu Daoyi had not arrived yet, and he had nothing to do, so he might as well have a fight. "Oh, you're jealous?" Ha! Bien Du laughed coldly. "I am in the medium extreme of the Eternal River tier, and my strength ranked 8th in the last batch of new students. Do I need to be jealous of you? Then what are you blabbering about?" Ling Han waved his hand. "Go somewhere cool." Asking for a beating. Bien Du leaped out. The martial courtyard did not prohibit students from sparring, what more here? If there were no outsiders, so what if he killed him? The people of the 8th campus all shook their heads. None of them were happy with Bien Du. What a joke. Ling Han had already used his strength to prove that no one below the consummate level of the Eternal River tier was a match for him, and you were merely in the medium extreme. Aren't you looking for a beating? But no one went to remind Bien Du this involved 2 campuses, so it was definitely to help the people of their own campus. The grudges between the new and old students were internal, after all, and could be resolved behind closed doors. Ling Han moved and shot out a punch, very casually. Bien Du smirked coldly. You actually dare to be so weaker than me, you'll be crying later. Sigh. On the side of the 8th campus, there were already many people sighing. Don't take it to heart. Ling Han is only a student who has just entered. Isn't it normal to lose to a senior brother from the last batch? The people from the other campuses said one after another. In their eyes, wasn't it normal for a new student to lose to a senior student? We are not sighing for Ling Han, but for Bien Du, someone from the 8th campus snickered. I hope senior brother Bien won't be too seriously injured. Pooh. The people from the other campuses all spluttered with laughter. What kind of joke was that? There was a whole minor level between the two of them. Even if he was a rank 3 king tier, so what? Bien Du was still a rank 1 king tier, after all. Your 8th campus was really funny. Bien Du also heard these sarcastic remarks. That was transmitted through divine sense, which was fast enough. He couldn't help but be furious. His hands turned into claws, and clawed fiercely at Ling Han. He was determined to tear off both of Ling Han's arms, and let everyone know that what number 1 among the new students? In front of the old students, especially in front of him, it was completely insufficient. He was the one who should be the focus of everyone's attention. A fist shot out, open and aboveboard. Bien Du's claw slashed out. He wanted to break this arm of Ling Han's first. The fist arrived, and Bien Du paled in shock. His attack was actually as fragile as paper in front of the other. The fist shot straight in, directly hitting his chest. How is this possible? Bien Du exclaimed internally, but his whole body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. When they saw this scene, everyone was speechless. Though many of the senior students had heard that Ling Han had obtained the first place in the tournament of new students this time, and his battle with Gu Daoyi was even more terrifying. It was said that it was on the level of the consummate level, but did anyone believe it? Unless they had seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that 2 people who had just advanced into the low extreme of the Eternal River tier could possess battle prowess at the consummate level? It had to be that the new students had not seen the world, and had exaggerated. Furthermore, stories would always be more exaggerated the more they spread. Perhaps after a few more years, these 2 people might even possess the battle prowess of a saint. But now, Ling Han had defeated Bien Du with a single punch. This was not a legend, but something that everyone had seen with their own eyes. Damn, why was this new student so terrifying? Chapter 1522. No wonder Ling Han could become the thorn of the 8th campus. If he didn't have powerful strength himself, it would be useless even with Ren Feiyun's help. Originally, when the news spread, everyone thought that Ling Han was spared completely because of Ren Feiyun's contribution, but now it seemed that Ren Feiyun's contribution could not go unnoticed, but Ling Han himself was also very impressive. The faces of everyone in the 8th campus were shining, and even the senior students were no exception. In the larger environment, the 8th campus was a family, so they naturally had to be united against the outside world. He's too strong. He's only entered the academy for a few years, and he defeated Bien Du, who was ranked 8th among the senior students of the previous batch. I really don't understand why such a genius wasn't taken as a disciple by the great saint. Hiss, how strong is that Gu Daoyi? Though the first place of this batch of new students was Ling Han, because the Star Sand Saint took Gu Daoyi as a personal disciple, this was equivalent to announcing to the world that Ling Han was inferior to Gu Daoyi. Though everyone felt Ling Han's display of might, for a long time, saints represented heaven's will. This concept was deeply rooted in people's hearts, especially when the words of the great saint were like golden rules. Thus, everyone thought that Gu Daoyi was stronger. Why did the Star Sand Saint take Gu Daoyi as a disciple so quickly? Wasn't it to boost Gu Daoyi's confidence, fearing that he would be unable to recover after a setback? The effect was astonishingly good. At least now, every student thought that Gu Daoyi was stronger than Ling Han. At this moment, a starship descended from the sky. Before the starship stopped, a person had already jumped down from it, his body shining with divine light as if born from heaven and earth and the center of the universe. Gu Daoyi, the greatest prodigy of all time, a supreme divine fetus. They had just talked about him, and he came. They were really enemies. Gu Daoyi. Hiss, just how long has it been since he fought with Ling Han, and he seems to have become much stronger again. As expected of the greatest prodigy of all time. Now that he has received personal guidance from the great saint, the improvement of his strength is far beyond our imagination. Sigh, this gap will only grow bigger and bigger. The new students shook their heads. At first, they were still full of confidence, believing that man could conquer nature. After all, they were all king tiers, but now, with Gu Daoyi, they all suffered a great blow. Some people really had to be convinced. There were very few people who hadn't lost their confidence. However, they were all king tiers among king tiers, such as second in the world, Long Xiangyue, Hong Ma, and so on. All of them were staring at Gu Daoyi, their eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Ling Han, on the other hand, kept a low profile. He wanted Gu Daoyi to discover the extraordinariness of the chariot himself. Although Gu Daoyi was only at the low extreme, he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and his divine fetus exuded a clear glow. Even the big shots didn't dare to underestimate him. Moreover, this was the 10th personal disciple of the Star Sand Saint, so who dared to put on airs in front of him? Junior brother Gu. Many people started to greet him. It was extremely likely that this was the 10th saint under the great sage's tutelage. If they didn't hurry up and establish a good relationship with him, they wouldn't be able to do so in the future. However, there were no big shots among them. People like Ren Feiyun were all incomparably arrogant, so how could they possibly come over to curry favor with a little junior brother? Gu Daoyi did not take it seriously at all. His gaze only lingered on Ling Han for a while longer, and then immediately withdrew it. He sized up the war chariot and the corpses of the 3 phoenix kings that were huddled together. Shock gradually appeared on his face. Who was he? He was a severing mundane ancestor of the celestial realm, so his judgment was naturally top-notch. A true phoenix, and one in the Saint King tier at that. At first, he did not believe that a secret technique of a celestial king would appear here, but there had indeed been a great commotion at the time, and a considerable number of celestial kings had indeed suffered a calamity. Otherwise, he would not have been able to obtain a portion of the inheritance of the 9 deaths heaven art in the ancestral grounds of the 9 snakes. This allowed him to form a divine fetus of 10 lives, and also filled him with greed for a celestial king heaven art. An incomplete technique was already so awesome, so what if it was complete? This was also the reason why he had to refine Empress Luanxing. It could greatly supplement his 9 deaths heaven art. Even if it was not complete, it would be countless times stronger than it was now. He had only come with a sliver of hope, but when he saw the Phoenix Kings pulling the war chariot, his heart throbbed. Perhaps it really was possible. He strode over to the side of the chest and stretched out a hand to open it. A great many people were displeased. They were greeting you, and you were too arrogant. It should be known that you were presently only in the low extreme of the eternal river tier, and not a saint. Gu Daoyi was completely unconcerned. In fact, he did not even take saints seriously. All the elites of the immortal realm were merely trash in his eyes. He gripped the lid of the chest with both hands and exerted force. Wang! Suddenly, a streak of golden light spread out from within the chest. It's open! There's really hope that it'll open. As expected of Gu Daoyi, his physique and power are far superior to those of the same cultivation level. I have to admit that I'm impressed. Seeing this scene, everyone sighed with emotion. Even some big shots couldn't help but nod. They had tried it themselves, and their physique was completely insufficient. As expected of a good seedling that the great saint had chosen, it was indeed astonishing. Ka. The chest was slowly opening, and veins were bulging on Gu Daoyi's forehead. Even if he was a divine fetus, he was slightly powerless now. His arms were trembling and he was about to collapse. Everyone go! A few big shots rushed over, and all moved to lift the lid of the chest. Previously, the chest had been tightly closed and could only be opened with the strength of one's fingers, but now it was different. The lid had already been lifted a few inches high, and could be completely lifted with one's palm. The difficulty was completely different now. With the combined strength of several people, especially the big shots, this chest finally slowly opened. It's open, it really has to be opened. I wonder what treasure is inside. It must be a precious treasure. Didn't you see that even the big shots can't open it? Of course, everyone was prepared to fight over it. Before opening the chest, they were naturally in harmony, and even had to work hand in hand, but once the treasure appeared, there was nothing more to say. Those that weren't qualified to go up and help out all drew out their treasures. Opening the chest was one thing, but fighting over it was another. Treasures like pseudo-saint tools were just for show. Wang, the chest opened, and golden light spread out, soaring into the sky. Suddenly, everyone rushed over, opening the treasure chest. If they were too slow, it would be gone. A great battle erupted without warning, very willful. Brat, let go, Grandpa Dog is going to show off his skills. The large black dog also wanted to go up and join in the fun, but Ling Han had grabbed his exposed tail, so he could only scratch with his claws. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Don't go, it's just a waste of time." The large black dog faltered. He was an ancestral master of swindling people. Suddenly, his eyes turned and he said, "Brat, is this something you did? With Grandpa Dog's understanding of you, how could you possibly sit still like this?" "Why can't I sit still?" Ling Han said with a smile. "You have an aura of greed seeping out from deep within your bones. Grandpa Dog can smell it from tens of thousands of kilometers away. You want to fool Grandpa Dog? You're still far from being able to." The large black dog pointed at Ling Han. Chapter 1524. If the person who ambushed him was the second in the world, then Gu Daoyi would at most secretly resent the other for deliberately hiding his strength previously, causing him to miscalculate, and even unleash the mystical power of 10 lives, but still suffer minor injuries. But this person was actually Ling Han. How could it be Ling Han? Before him, only the second in the world had clearly gone over. Could it be that he suddenly paused and this guy had come from some other place? Gu Daoyi's expression changed. Why would the other do this? Could it be that he deliberately did not want others to know his whereabouts, the second in the world? "You have specially come to deal with me?" he asked menacingly. Though it was a question, his tone was very certain. Ling Han stretched out a finger. "The grievances between you and me should also be completely settled. Are you worthy of saying such words to me?" Gu Daoyi scoffed. "In my first life, I was a severing mundane ancestor of the celestial realm. Who do you think you are?" He similarly pointed at Ling Han, his expression filled with disdain. He did not attack immediately because he wanted to stall for time. Starting a battle here was too disadvantageous for him. In contrast, Ling Han, with his powerful physique, was definitely less affected than him. Previously, he had lost to Ling Han, and now that he had been severely weakened, he was definitely no match for Ling Han. This was definitely not a spar. The other had come for his life, and even if Gu Daoyi was incredibly conceited, he still chose to stall for time. As long as someone else arrived, would Ling Han still dare to kill him? As long as he escaped, he could cultivate for a few more years before coming back to settle the score, or even ask the Star Sand Saint to act. Ling Han had absolute confidence. Previously, he had only inscribed a level 14 killing formation in his body, and he could defeat Gu Daoyi, but now it was the Blood Crow formation that was ranked first among the level 15 killing formations. Even if Gu Daoyi's cultivation level had advanced rapidly, it was not powerful to such an extent. He smiled faintly, and was not in a hurry to attack. He asked, "How do you know that I am not the reincarnation of a celestial king?" Hee. Gu Daoyi smirked coldly. In truth, he really wanted to give Ling Han a slap, but he could only endure it now. He looked around and said, "I'm very curious. If you deliberately lured me here, then with your strength, there's no way you could have done this. This is the treasure trove of the Heavenly River King. All those years ago, the Heavenly River King had indeed obtained the inheritance of a celestial king. In the end, he was besieged by a great many elites of the Forbidden Lands, and ultimately died. However, This treasure trove was not obtained by the Forbidden Lands, Ling Han explained, appearing to be very kind. Gu Daoi's breathing suddenly became rapid, and his eyes widened slightly. His gaze towards Ling Han was filled with desire. Ling Han nodded and said, "You guessed correctly. This treasure is indeed in my hands. I'll also lure you out to solve a problem." Immortal King Technique's Gu Daoi's body was trembling. Perhaps Ling Han did not know what the two words, Celestial King, represented, but he was extremely clear. Celestial kings were the kings of the whole celestial realm. The celestial realm was vast, and elites were as common as clouds, but how many celestial kings were there? As far as he knew, there were only a mere 7. Of course, even if he was a severing mundane ancestor, he only lived in a corner of the celestial realm and had not traveled the whole celestial realm at all, so his knowledge was limited. But was the place that a severing mundane ancestor had gone to not large enough? Only 7 celestial kings could be born here? This was a being at the apex of the pyramid of the celestial realm. He had only obtained a portion of the 9 Deaths Heaven art, but he could be sure that when he returned to the severing mundane tier in future, he definitely would not be a match for anyone in the same cultivation level. Only those who had also cultivated a Celestial King technique could match him. Ling Han might have obtained a complete Celestial King technique. "Give it to me, it's mine." Veins were bulging on Gu Daoi's forehead, and his eyes were bright red. "Bullshit." Ling Han moved, grabbing towards Gu Daoi. Gu Daoi was naturally long prepared, and the bodies of his 9 lives all flew out, and a supreme clear radiance circulated around his divine fetus. 2 flashes of light shot out of his eyes, filled with a terrifying destructive power. This was a mystical power that he had newly cultivated, and could only be used when he reached the Eternal River tier. Previously he had not completely grasped it, and now he could finally use it. "You have improved, but how could it be that I have not?" Gu Daoi called out. His hands formed seals, and he used another mystical power. That was the Azure Wolf Seal, which he had obtained in his first life in the celestial realm. Its might was boundless, and only those who had reached the Eternal River tier could just barely use it. Ling Han was unafraid and advanced powerfully. Peng, he shot out a punch and forcibly destroyed Gu Daoi's 8th life, and then with another punch, the 5th life also immediately died. He directly charged over, and a single punch killed the 1st life. Gu Daoi was stunned. His body of 9 lives was now even stronger than his, so how could it be so weak? No, no, no. How had Ling Han become so powerful? How was this possible? How was this possible? It had only been a few short years, and he had relied on a few mystical powers to increase his strength by 3 or 4 times. This was already a remarkable achievement, but Ling Han's strength had increased by more than 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times. It was clear that this guy's cultivation level had only increased by 1 star, but why had his battle prowess increased explosively by so much? Could it be? The toughness of your bones is actually strong enough to be able to inscribe formation patterns that are 2 cultivation levels higher. He suddenly came to a realization. Otherwise, it was definitely impossible for Ling Han to increase his battle prowess by 1,000,000 times under the condition that there was practically no change in his cultivation level. You freak. Now, he really believed a little that Ling Han was the reincarnation of a celestial king. Otherwise, how could he possibly be so strong? Ling Han suddenly advanced, and after throwing out 9 punches, Gu Daoi's 9 lives were also completely destroyed. He was closing in on the main target. Gu Daoi gritted his teeth. It was impossible to escape. That Saint King's claw was suppressing him, so he could only carefully crawl out, but in the present situation, could he do it? He could only fight to the death and hold on until someone came over. He patted his chest and channeled 3 mouthfuls of celestial source power at the same time. 2 mouthfuls were definitely not enough. Pooh, multiple cracks immediately appeared on his skin, and fresh blood gushed out, turning him into a man of blood. Previously, 2 mouthfuls of celestial source power had almost caused him to collapse. What more 3 mouthfuls? But if he did not use 3 mouthfuls, he would not be able to match Ling Han at all. This was a move that he had no other choice. I, Gu Daoyi, am a supreme divine fetus, and will definitely not lose in a battle of equals, he roared. It was unknown whether he was boasting or encouraging himself. Ling Han's expression was indifferent. What you have cultivated is merely the incomplete 9 Deaths Heaven art, while I have fused the strong points of various Celestial King tier secret techniques into the indestructible Heaven Scroll. In the past, I had not found a way to use the indestructible Heaven Scroll in attack, but it was different now. Competing with me on celestial techniques, are you worthy? He pressed down with his palm, and the 10 mouthfuls of blood crow formation showed their might at the same time. At present, he was in a hurry to suppress Gu Daoyi, fearing that the latter's body would explode from overexertion and his wife would not be able to use it. At first, it was fine if the Empress's cultivation was a little slower, and he could not bear to let the Empress charge into battle, but now this was related to his sexual happiness. "Fuck you, you dare destroy my things," he said angrily. Gu Daoyi was startled at first, and then came to his senses. He almost fainted in fury. You actually think of me as a meal on a platter. But at this moment, Ling Han's palm had already pressed down, and there was a lifelike blood crow spreading its wings in his palm, exuding an incredibly frightening aura. How could he bear it? Chapter 1525. A palm pressed down, suppressing the heavens. Gu Daoyi's fists shot out explosively, and the power of his divine fetus was completely released. He released an angry roar, drawing upon the power of the stars in the sky. A galaxy opened up, and 6 stars shone brightly, each shockingly huge, covered with a dense silver celestial radiance. Fight it out. But what use was this? Ling Han pressed down with his palm, and Gu Daoyi was instantly suppressed, directly tossed into the Black Tower. He was already much stronger than Gu Daoyi in the first place, and added with the suppression of Gu Daoyi here, he easily suppressed him with a single move. At this time, the people closest to the summit still had about 20% of the way to go. Ling Han tossed out the second in the world, and in a mischievous mood he pulled off his pants, then climbed out of the treasure trove, and returned to the foot of the mountain according to the original path. "Brat, where did you go?" The large black dog stopped him. "You have a lecherous smile on your face, so you must be up to no good. I demolished your kennel." Ling Han was in a good mood, and countered the large black dog's moves. The large black dog looked at him suspiciously and said, "I say, little Han, this is not right. How can you not call Grandpa Dog when there is something good like murder and arson? Grandpa Dog can even stand guard at the side for you." Ling Han snickered coldly. "You just want to be lively, right? If someone really comes, you will definitely add fuel to the fire. You are simply a despicable dog that wants to see the world in chaos." "Hee, you actually guessed correctly, I have nothing to say to that." The large black dog was shameless. "I can't be bothered with you." Ling Han climbed up the mountain, whistling as he did. Gu Daoyi was completely meat inside the Black Tower, and could only resign himself to his fate. "Ling Han, where is this? How can there be such a large spatial god tool? Who are you exactly?" Gu Daoyi shouted desperately in the Black Tower. His celestial source power had already been suppressed by the Black Tower, and now he could only stand, unable to move at all. "What are you shouting for? This is a place for you to shout." The Azura Demon Emperor appeared. He had always bullied the weak and feared the strong, and now that Gu Daoyi was completely defenseless, he naturally had to show off his might. Gu Daoyi was about to go crazy. A mere Sun Moon tier actually dared shout at him. Was he trying to turn the world? Path Azura Demon Emperor immediately lashed out with a slap, and fiercely said, "What kind of expression is that? What kind of look is that? You dare to look down on your grandpa? You're so weak, yet you still dare to oppose my master. You're asking for a beating." Without a second word, he beat him up. "Ling Han, you've gone too far. A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. You allowed a lackey to humiliate me? You're too shameless." Gu Daoyi was about to go mad. He was a severing mundane ancestor. "Lackey." The Azura Demon Emperor wore a proud expression, and said, "Brat, Being able to become master's lackey is a good thing that you can't even beg for it. Do you think that just anyone can become master's lackey? Che, my master won't even look at trash like you in the eye. His face was full of flattery. Master, you are our red sun. Wherever you shine, there will be light. Master, you are the guiding light in the darkness. Master, you are the strongest expert who stands at the peak. Everyone in the world can only worship you. Gu Daoi's face was full of sappiness. This was the first time he had seen someone flatter to such a fresh and refined extent. He was already dumbfounded. Ling Han smiled internally and blocked his connection with the Black Tower. From the moment that Gu Dawei had been tossed into the Black Tower, this person had already become a thing of the past and was not worth another look. What greatest prodigy of all time! He was merely someone who had cultivated an incomplete secret technique of a celestial king tier. When Ling Han reached the peak, there were actually only 31 people there. They were all searching in the treasure trove, but they had been plundered by Ling Han, so it was like a swarm of locusts had passed through. Was there even the slightest bit of good stuff left behind? Meanwhile, the second in the world was sitting on the ground with a dumbfounded expression. His thick fingers were clutching at his hair. There was a gap in his memory. Why the fuck was I lying on the ground just now? Oh, that's right, I was knocked unconscious by someone. Nothing was missing from my body, but my pants had been stripped off. Gasp. The second in the world involuntarily pressed his hand to his buttocks. Could it be that this was a rapist? At first, it was nothing, but his heart tightened. He could faintly feel a pain in his buttocks, causing him to pale in shock. It couldn't be that his ass had been penetrated by someone, right? His eyes swept over them. Everyone here now was a suspect. Ling Han just happened to climb down, and when he saw the second in the world's dumbfounded and terrified expression, he couldn't help but laugh internally and asked, "Brother Second, what's wrong? You don't look too good, who asked you to fucking run so fast?" The second in the world only nodded randomly at Ling Han. He widened his eyes and swept his gaze over the other 30 people one by one. There was Ren Feiyun, Qi Tian, and the other big shots. Fuck, there were too many people, so it was hard to distinguish. Pooh! Ling Han spluttered with laughter. When the large black dog saw this, he immediately stood up and said, "Brat, does this have anything to do with you? That bear looks like its ass has been penetrated by someone. Could it be?" Gasp. The large black dog was so frightened that he took a few steps back. "I had not thought that you were this kind of person. Grandpa Dog is warning you, if you dare have any ideas about me, I will bite your buttocks into 3 pieces. Ling Han ignored him. He had only wanted to play a prank, so he had teased the second in the world a little. He had not thought that the effect would be a little too good, causing the second in the world to panic and search everywhere for his adulterer. After a round of searching, everyone naturally did not gain anything. They were unwilling to give up and continued to search. Could there be some treasure trove within the storehouse? They wanted nothing more than to flatten every mountain and dig 3 feet into the ground to search. But they still did not gain anything. No one cared about why Gu Dawei had disappeared. When they had entered previously, everyone had been searching for treasures, so who would care that one person was missing? Presumably, Gu Dawei had long since left when he saw that he had not gained anything. Everyone left helplessly, but they had just left the world of the chest when they saw a golden path spread out from an endless distance. Then, they saw a person walking over. He was obviously just strolling, but in the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of them. Torrential Rain Saint. When everyone saw this, they all exclaimed in shock. Some immediately knelt down, and those that did not knelt also wore expressions of respect. Saints stood at the pinnacle of martial art and were respected by all in the world. The Torrential Rain Saint raised his head slightly. He looked at the 3 Phoenix King corpses and couldn't help but show an expression of surprise. There had been a treasure trove here, and the news had definitely reached his ears, but he was not tempted. When one had reached his level, he had already fused with heaven's will to a certain extent. If it could bring him benefits or disadvantages, he would definitely feel it on a whim and sense it. Because he had not sensed anything, he naturally did not move out. The other saints were the same, but when the chest had been opened previously, golden light had soared into the sky. Even the faraway wood-figure planet had seen it, and this caused the 10 saints to be slightly curious. Thus he came over. He believed that no matter what happened, he would be able to easily deal with it. However, when he saw the 3 Phoenix King corpses, he was dumbfounded. He could not deal with this. Chapter 1526. Stay here and don't move, the torrential rain sage said in a low voice. As you command, everyone replied solemnly. The torrential rain sage rode the golden path and returned to Wood-figure Planet. However, although sages could shatter space, they could not achieve the world's end so close. They still needed a certain amount of time. About an hour later, the 10 saints finally arrived together, a golden path shining brightly. When everyone saw this, they were all indescribably shocked. It actually alarmed the 10 saints. 10 saints? The Star Sand Saint walked towards the Phoenix King's corpse, causing Ling Han to feel slightly nervous. His Feng'er's wife was receiving the inheritance inside, so she definitely could not be interrupted. He secretly decided that if the Star Sand Saint really wanted to do something, he would stop him even if he had to sacrifice the blood essence of a Saint King. Fortunately, the Star Sand Saint soon stopped, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. He was completely not confident that he could suppress these 3 corpses, even if these 3 Phoenix Kings were already dead, even if he was a high and mighty great saint. Master! The 9 saints came over. The Star Sand Saint wore a solemn expression and said, "This is the body of a Saint King." Hiss! The 9 saints all sucked in a breath of cold air. With their eyesight, they could naturally tell that this wasn't a monster that they had never seen before, but rather 3 true phoenixes hugging together. A true phoenix was definitely a saint tier, but it was hard to imagine how powerful a Saint King would be. 3 Phoenix Kings are pulling the war chariot. How precious are the treasures it carries, Kucha Sage said. The 10 saints looked at each other. If they could obtain the Saint King's relic, then small saints could possibly become medium saints, and great saints had hope of advancing further and stepping into the supreme pinnacle. Go in. The box kept opening, and they naturally arrived at the chaos. They also learned from the students that there was actually a small world inside. When the sage entered, even if the others had already entered once, they could not help but follow him in. Even the saints were alarmed. The importance of this matter was beyond imagination. They couldn't find the treasure, but maybe the saints could. When Ling Han also entered the world within the box, he saw that the 10 saints had already arrived at the top of the main peak. Obviously, the pressure of the giant claw had no effect on these saints, or it could be said that they were too far away to pose any threat at all. The Star Sand Saint moved and began to retrieve this massive claw. Although a great sage couldn't be compared to a Saint King, this was only a claw, after all, and not a complete corpse. Moreover, the 3 Phoenix Kings outside were huddled together, and their bloodlines were connected. How could a broken claw compare to it? The Star Sand Saint unleashed his full power, dispelling the terrifying saintly might of the massive claw. The others could clearly sense that the destructive power of the mountain winds on the main peak was rapidly weakening. Withdraw! The Star Sand Saint roared again, and the massive claw disappeared. Ling Han could not help but be envious. This was the Saint King's claw. If he could make a bowl of soup and drink it, there would definitely be endless benefits. But who would dare to snatch food from the great sage? With the giant claw gone, there was naturally no longer any threat here. Everyone began to sweep through the area. Even the 10 sages pushed the mountains and overturned the seas, but they did not gain anything. Actually, it could not be said that there was none. The Sage King's claw was an astonishing treasure, and refining the sacred source energy within it might even be beneficial to great sages. Where's Gu Daoyi? The Star Sand Saint suddenly faltered. This last disciple had arrived here long ago. At first, he thought that he was in the world inside the box, but he did not sense Gu Daoyi's aura. Where had he gone? The 9 sages also hurriedly spread out their divine sense to search. This was their master's final disciple, and also had high hopes for him. In the future, he would inherit his legacy. But no matter how they searched, they could not find any trace of Gu Dawi. The Star Sand Saint's expression was dark, and he had those who had entered first repeat their experiences. Then, after the second in the world also recounted his experiences, the Star Sand Saint's emotions involuntarily fluctuated slightly. Suddenly, a terrifying hurricane swept up in the mountains, its might not the slightest bit inferior to the mountain winds affected by the massive claw. The Star Sand Saint could conclude that the mysterious person who had knocked the second in the world unconscious had something to do with the disappearance of his disciple. It was not that he had not suspected the second in the world, but he definitely did not think that the second in the world had the ability to capture Gu Dawi without alerting others, even under those special circumstances previously. If the supreme divine fetus was so weak, how could he possibly have taken him in as a personal disciple? Who was this person? The big shots among the students all had this kind of strength, but everyone said that Gu Dawi was the second person to enter here, and if someone had been faster than him, it had to be someone extremely powerful in terms of physique. Among the big shots, there was not a single person who fulfilled this kind of condition, and in terms of physique, Gu Dawi actually had the upper hand. The Star Sand Saint's gaze turned towards Ling Han. Though he was only a new student, he had defeated Gu Dawi previously, and his physique was astonishing, so he had an incredible advantage here. Ling Han, the great saint suddenly said, his voice like thunder, sounding like a blow to the head. Was it you who captured Gu Dawi? Ling Han made an sound, his expression filled with confusion, and he was extremely confused. Seeing this, the large black dog couldn't help but give a thumbs up in his mind. This was really like Grandpa Dog style. When the news of Gu Dawi's disappearance spread, he did not need to think a second time, and immediately determined that it was Ling Han who had done it. You secretly ascended the mountain, and then secretly came down, changing to another path before going up again. Isn't this clearly showing that you were a thief before? You want to play petty tricks in front of Grandpa Dog? You're still too young. The Star Sand Saint was millions and millions of times stronger than the large black dog, but in terms of understanding of Ling Han, he was far from being able to compare to the large black dog. In his eyes, Ling Han's confused expression definitely did not seem to be an act. It has nothing to do with me? The Star Sand Saint thought, but aside from Ling Han, who else could have such a strong physique and be the first to reach the summit ahead of the second in the world in Gu Dawi? It can't be Ling Han. The second in the world was very loyal, and he explained that Ling Han had appeared far later than the others. But when the Star Sand Saint heard this, an expression of doubt appeared on his face. With Ling Han's physique, so be it that he hadn't been the first to reach the summit, but he was actually slower than so many others? This was illogical. Ling Han thought, the second in the world is the worst person in the world. If you don't you speak, no one will think you are a mute. If I had known, I would have drawn him into the Black Tower and locked him up for 8 to 10 years. The Star Sand Saint turned to Ling Han and calmly said, your physique is so strong, so why did you appear so late? Ling Han's heartbeat was steady, and he replied, in reply to the saint, I wandered around the other peaks, so I arrived late. The Star Sand Saint pondered. This was indeed a very good reason, but should he really believe it? He spread out his divine sense and searched Ling Han's body. After a while, he said, take out your spatial spirit tool. Ling Han retrieved a ring and respectfully handed it over. Thankfully, he had come prepared. This was used to conceal the Black Tower. Elites like them would definitely have a spatial spirit tool on them, right? The Star Sand Saint waved his hand and took the ring. Then he used his divine sense to sweep over it. There were some true origin stones, some alchemical pills and medicinal herbs, but there was definitely not a single corpse, nor any remains of a corpse. It really wasn't this brat. Chapter 1528. Some women were beautiful to the point of being noble, some were beautiful to the point of being aloof, and some were seductive to the bone. Lin Yuqi was clearly the seductive type. Her beauty was far inferior to the Empress, but she was definitely the type that would make men want to take off their pants at first sight. Yo, isn't this my little brother Han? Lin Yuqi's habit of teasing others hadn't changed at all. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw Ling Han, and she began to act flirtatiously. The Empress smiled faintly, and her dignified gaze immediately swept over. Big sister? Lin Yuqi was like a mouse that had seen a cat, immediately becoming obedient. In fact, she even lowered her head and played with her clothes. Her memory of this Empress being so domineering was still fresh in her mind. Ling Han smiled and said, "Business doesn't seem to be doing very well recently." "Sigh, don't mention it. Not only is it not doing well, it's practically deserted." Lin Yuqi wore a distressed expression and said exaggeratedly, "I'm so poor now that I'm about to sell myself." If the Empress hadn't been present, she would definitely have winked at Ling Han and asked if he was interested in keeping her as his mistress or something like that. Now, however, she could only suppress these words, which made her feel slightly uncomfortable. A leopard couldn't change its spots, so she couldn't pretend to be serious even if she tried. Ling Han said, "Then let me introduce you to a business deal." Lin Yuqi looked at him suspiciously and asked, "You really want to introduce me to a business deal?" Ling Han shook his head, retrieved a few pieces of godly metal, and said, "I want to ask you to help me sell these pieces of godly metal. Additionally, I also want to buy some low-level godly metal, from level 11 to level 13. He had obtained far too much level 14 godly metal, so he could take out a large portion and sell them for level 11 to level 13 godly metal to help his divine demon sword advance. Gasp! Level 14 godly metal. Lin Yuqi rushed over and practically snatched the pieces of godly metal from him. "Ioyo, I say, just how many people have you robbed? You've actually managed to obtain so much high-level godly metal. It's just that it's a little strange. These pieces of godly metal seem very similar." She had a guess in her mind, yet she didn't dare to believe it. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. "Do they look like floor tiles?" "That's right, this was originally taken down from the stairs. It wasn't just like it was." Lin Yuqi nodded. However, she merely thought that Ling Han was joking. This was level 14 godly metal, so who would use it to make bricks? How extravagant would that be? A strange expression appeared on her face, and she said, "This is a medicine shop. You want me to sell godly metal?" "Can't I?" Ling Han asked. Lin Yuqi pondered for a moment. There would definitely not be many people who could afford a level 14 godly metal. However, it would definitely be able to attract countless people to come and take a look. In that case, wouldn't her shop become popular? All right. She immediately nodded and threw him a flirtatious look. "You've done me a great favor. Do you want me to repay you with my body? I don't want a single true origin stone. Just exchange all of it for level 11 to 13 godly metal. Additionally, you can take this spatial ring. There's still some godly metal inside. I think it should be enough to exchange for the godly metal I need." Ling Han handed over a spatial spirit tool, treating it as if she was speaking nonsense. Lin Yuqi was astonished. Just these few pieces of level 14 godly metal were an indescribable wealth, yet he actually had more in his possession. She scanned the spatial ring with her divine sense, and almost fainted. Holy Mother! There was actually a small mountain of godly metal inside. Although she hadn't carefully inspected each piece, she could conclude that each piece was a high-level godly metal. "Brat, aren't you afraid that I'll take it for myself?" Ling Han seemed to have anticipated her thoughts, and he lightly released his aura. Eternal River Tear. Lin Yuqi's expression paled. She couldn't determine Ling Han's cultivation level, but if Ling Han actively released his aura, she could still determine it. There was no lack of elites at this level among the 4 major clans of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. However, only a few years had passed, and Ling Han had advanced from the Sun Moon tier to the Eternal River tier. This was practically unbelievable. If things continued like this, wouldn't he become a saint in no time? Who dared to steal the belongings of a saint? It wasn't that Lin Yuqi didn't think of taking these pieces of godly metal back to the Cloud Apex planet. However, this thought disappeared in a flash. What a joke! She could only befriend such a freak. She definitely couldn't offend him. "I'll come back in a few years." Ling Han waved his hand and swaggered off with Empress Luan Xing in his arms. This brat is really going to defy the heavens. Lin Yuqi shook her head and smiled bitterly. Who knows, he might already be a saint the next time we meet. Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing quickly returned. His beautiful wife was there, so how could he bear to abandon her? In any case, he could have Ding Ping or Jiuyao return from time to time to collect the resources distributed by the academy and scout out the situation. There was no better place to cultivate than the Black Tower, right? Time passed quickly, and another 9 years quickly passed. On this day, blazing flames suddenly erupted from the corpses of the 3 Phoenix Kings. It was as if they were going to rise from the ashes and come back to life. When Ling Han found out about this, he naturally rushed over immediately. However, a small starship had already soared into the sky and was heading toward Woodfigure Planet. Ling Han thought for a moment and then ignored them. Instead, he channeled his cultivation technique to change his appearance and rushed toward the few people who had stayed behind to guard this place. There naturally weren't any elites among those who had stayed behind here. Ping 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 ping. Before they could even react, they were all beaten down by Ling Han. It would only take a short while for a saint to travel from Woodfigure Planet, but it would take at least 3 days for that starship to travel back. Thus, Ling Han still had 3 days to maneuver. He thought that the 3 Phoenix Kings were probably burning the last of their power. Their bodies had all become transparent, and he could see that the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was in a weightless state. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, and her whole body was curled up. Meanwhile, her beautiful hair was flying toward the sky. Wife, you have to hurry. Otherwise, if some saint comes, we'll have to escape from this galaxy, Ling Han murmured. Ling Han murmured. It was very easy to link the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to the treasure trove of this place, and the relationship between the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Ling Han was not a secret, so it instantly dragged everyone into it. 2 days later, the flames of the Phoenix Kings had also burned to the limit and suddenly collapsed. Immediately afterward, a new flame rose, and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden floated proudly in the sky, a pair of wings that were 30,000 meters long spread out behind her. The length didn't change, but the divine patterns that appeared on them were countless times more complicated than before. This was not an increase in cultivation level, but rather a fundamental transformation. Just like how the Star Sand Saint had used a drop of blood essence of a Saint King to increase the natural talent and physique of his son, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had also done the same, but the benefits that she had obtained were who knew how many times greater. Didn't she see that even the Star Sand Saint didn't dare to touch the corpses of the 3 Phoenix Kings? Wife! Ling Han called, and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden immediately opened her eyes. With a flap of her wings, she flew over and threw herself into Ling Han's arms. She retracted her wings and looked slightly excited. After all, they hadn't seen each other for many years. Let's go! Ling Han drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle and immediately soared into the sky. After making a half circle, he flew back to Woodfigure Planet from the opposite direction. At this time, a golden path was finally laid out from Woodfigure Planet. Some saints had set off. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.